Public Library. Ahead of the Memorial Day weekend, we'll hear from Congressman Seth Moulton. He did 4 tours.
Music Award World Act of the Year, Nicholas Enden and Matt Smith join us for Live Music Friday ahead of Club Passim's long-standing Campfire Festival this weekend. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live at the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. The UN's top court has ruled against Israel in a case brought by South Africa. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports on what judges at the International Court of Justice in The Hague are ordering Israel to do.
The court issued 4 orders today. First, that Israel shall immediately halt its military offensive in Rafah. Secondly, that Israel needs to keep the Rafah border crossing open to humanitarian aid. Third, the court ruled that Israel needs to allow the UN's investigative bodies access to Gaza. And lastly, the court ordered Israel to submit a report within a month on the measures it's taken to fulfill the court's orders today.
That's NPR's Rob Schmitz reporting. Israel is not expected to comply as the Israeli military continues targeting Hamas more than 7 months after the militants attacked southern Israel, sparking the current war. China has carried out another day of military exercises near Taiwan. NPR's Emily Fang says these latest drills included fighter jets, bombers, and naval ships.
China said this week's military drills were to punish Taiwan and any notions of independence for it, and to punish the U.S., which it accused of supporting Taiwan independence in its actions. U.S. policy is not to support Taiwan independence, but instead to maintain its ambiguous status. Congressional support for Taiwan has meant more American officials are visiting the island in the last 2 years. And so, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin indicated more military drills around Taiwan are in the works. He warned that any time, quote, the forces for Taiwanese independence stir up trouble, China would increase the degree of force to defend its territorial claims over Taiwan. Emily Fang, NPR News, Taipei, Taiwan.
Public health officials are warning of a new street drug combination showing up in the U.S. that includes fentanyl and a chemical that stops people's hearts from functioning normally. NPR's Brian Mann says the drug mix is already triggering large numbers of overdoses in Illinois and Pennsylvania and appears to be spreading.
Drug gangs already mix street fentanyl with xylazine, an animal tranquilizer toxic in humans. Now officials say drugs sold on the street are being laced with a new chemical, often used by veterinarians, called medetomidine, that slows the human heart to dangerous levels. Alex Kurtulski heads an organization called NPS Discovery that studies America's street drug supply. He says medetomidine is hitting drug users hard.
The numbers that were reported out of Philadelphia were 160 hospitalizations over a 3 or 4 day period.
Kurtulski predicted medetomidine will spread nationwide. Mass overdose outbreaks linked to the chemical have also been reported in Chicago and Pittsburgh. Brian Mann, NPR News.
This is NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts is one of more than 24 states that joined the Justice Department yesterday in suing Ticketmaster and its parent company Live Nation over alleged anti-competitive conduct when it comes to the sale of concert tickets. According to a statement from Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell, the lawsuit alleges that Live Nation's conduct not only violates the law but stifles innovation by forcing venues to use only Ticketmaster or strategically acquiring venues in order to eliminate competition. Among the local venues under Live Nation's control are the House of Blues, MGM Music Hall in the Fenway, the Leader Bank Pavilion in the Seaport, and the Xfinity Center in Mansfield. White sharks are returning to Cape Cod waters for the season, just in time for Memorial Day. 2 were seen off Monterey. As in past years, scientists from the state and the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy plan to monitor data from 5 real-time receivers that detect tagged sharks. This is Conservancy biologist Megan Winton.
We'd like to remind the public that this technology is not intended to be an early warning system. It's a proxy for the activity of the population as a whole. So when there are a lot of tagged sharks being detected on the real times, it means there are a lot of sharks out there.
So many are tagged, many are not. State shark scientist Greg Scommel says real-time detection helps educate the public about how much time sharks are spending in the area. Good day to be in the water today. We're hitting 80 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Schwab, with Schwab investing themes like artificial intelligence, renewable energy, or pet passion. Over 40 themes to invest in. Learn more at schwab.com. And the Doris Duke Foundation.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on youtube.com. Thank you /GBH News. A little later in the show, we're going to hear from Congressman and Marine Iraq War veteran Seth Moulton about Memorial Day, what a special thing that they've done down in D.C. For Memorial Day, and also how we are conducting how Israel is conducting, I should say, the war against Hamas. Morning, Jim.
Hey there. And by the way, we want to say to all of you who are not here, if you want to get out of the heat and into the heat, you should come to see our... Oh, my God.
It's not that
the show
bad.
At the library. No, we love being here.
You don't want to dissuade anybody.
No, come on down. Marjorie will blow on you, or Jamie, or somebody
I don't
will.
think Marjorie will be doing
well,
that.
I shouldn't. That was really a big mistake.
Big mistake.
Okay, let's start over. Congratulations to everyone out there for making it to the unofficial blossom of summer. And that, of course, is Memorial Day weekend. It's a perfect opportunity to spend time outside with loved ones. And if you remembered to book your parking spot like 3 months ago, you can make it onto one of Massachusetts' fabulous public beaches. We were inspired to this discussion by ongoing reporting by our colleague, Chris Burrell, to open the phone and text lines for a conversation with you about access to beaches here in the Commonwealth. Get this number, 12%. That's the most recent number we have. 12% of Massachusetts coastline is open and accessible to the public. Yeah. State officials, for their part, say they're hearing complaints from residents that have made efforts to try and expand access with a new outdoor recreation plan, whatever that means. And by the way, a lot of the 88% of beaches that are inaccessible, this really upsets Marjorie, are getting your tax dollars. So here are the questions at 877-301-8970. We'd love to hear your stories about access, if you have any tricks about how to get onto those 12% of public beaches, or not get on, depending. 2, do you agree with, what's the state rep's name? Dylan Fernandez, that any money that goes from the state to to beaches in Massachusetts should carry with it a mandate that those state taxpayer-funded repairs or whatever's open their beaches to members of the public? And thirdly, we always love to hear your pet peeves. Marjorie's is on the beach. Yours is the loud music, the boombox thing.
I'm not a fan of loud music on the beach.
My thing is, and let me just put it as politely as possible, back up. I mean, literally. Sitting down or lying down on top of somebody or virtually on top of somebody drives me nuts. The number is 877-301-8970. Our primary focus, though, for this discussion is how you feel about your taxpayer dollars going to communities on the coast who do not allow you to use their beaches even though you're paying for them.
Well, we have a great Chris Burrell story talking about what other towns do to dissuade people from out of town from coming to their beaches. Marshville got money to help a grant for coastal resiliency from the state, but Marshville only gives a small number of parking spaces for non-residents to the beach. So I guess if you can walk to the beach, like I said, $1.2 million from the state to renourish, as they put it, critically eroded shoreline. This is a climate change crisis, of course. Situate got $2 million last year to replenish 26,000 cubic yards of sand, but the town sells just a few hundred beach stickers to non-residents, and they're $350 a piece. Ipswich, same kind of thing. They find people for parking around there. So I think it's a problem to ask the entire state to finance your problems with beach erosion and then not allow the people that paid for it to come there without paying these very hefty parking fees. It just doesn't seem to make sense.
Very hefty parking fees. You can't get on. They provide so few spaces to non-residents for the most part. Even if you're willing to pay the fee, you can't get on. By the way, I think it's his original piece. A couple of years ago, Barriers at the Beach was the fabulous piece that sort of broke this all open by Chris Burrell. Check it out. 877-301-8970. Can I say one more thing? I don't even want to talk about this because it's too aggravating. Homeowners who are lucky enough to have a house on the beach owned to the low tide line. So you can't even walk down the damn beach there where they live. They essentially own the beach.
Well, I think in practice you can.
No, you can't.
Yes,
How
you
about
can.
that guy? Excuse me.
I spent tons of time
what are you
walking
talking about?
down
We talked a
beaches.
couple of years ago about the old guy who got arrested for arrested
He was
for
arrested.
walking on the beach.
It's unusual. I mean, I think a lot of people, including myself, have spent many years of my life walking up and down beaches. And
Well, you're a criminal, obviously.
No, I'm a criminal, but no one stops you. And I think
that is a rotten attitude because they might stop you.
But I just want to point out that you can do it. It's the rule, but it's kind of like speeding. No one's supposed to speed, and everybody does it.
So why do you speed? We're going to talk about that at the end of the show.
We're going to talk about that later because you drive like everybody speeds. You have to keep up, Jim.
Okay.
No one drives quite as slowly as you do on
A couple of
highways.
grandmothers do, actually. 877-301-8970. We're talking about beach access. If you have any tricks you want to share with us about how you get onto certain beaches that mere mortals are not able to navigate and that sort of thing.
You know, it's going to be a big weekend for beaches this
really?
weekend. Yeah, huge. Biggest travel weekend we've had in ages.
Also, how
Memorial
beautiful
Day.
is today? I mean, it is
very
just
nice.
incredible.
MJ from Watertown, what do you think, MJ?
Hello, MJ.
Hi there, Marjorie, Jim. Lovely to speak with you.
You too.
So I'm so glad you're covering this topic. This makes me so angry that we're not allowed access to the beach.
What happened to you?
I was actually turned away from Marshfield this week.
It's great.
So what
All the way
happened?
there.
What happened?
I drove all the way there, and they told me that you had to sticker because the parking lot was full, so they were only allowing people with stickers.
Yeah, and
Which
that
I'm assuming means that. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was going to say that is the huge problem that you can't park in the parking lot because it's spaces for non-residents at his beaches are there's very few of them.
So, MJ, tell us how you felt when you were turned away from that beach that your tax dollars were helping to fund. How'd you feel?
I was really mad because I wasted 3 hours, and what can you do? You can't argue with the poor teens that are there covering the parking lot. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, the one they mentioned up in the North Shore in that, that's Marshfield's the South Shore, what am I talking about? But we have the most restrictive ocean access laws in the country. And the two ones they mentioned are big open ones, Cape Cod National Seashore, which is a long way from Marshfield, and the Parker River National Wildlife Refuge, but that's on the North Shore.
Well, so National Seashore, the feds. You can't blame our state leaders
No,
for
but
the
that
feds.
is an open beach. That's an open beach. There are a lot of sharks there now, of course, so a lot of people don't want to swim there.
That's an issue.
But MJ, so what did you end up doing?
I had to drive all the way home. So 3 hours of wasted, 95 degree, in the car for wasted.
Stay mad, MJ.
You can't walk there because you can't. You can't walk there because all of the close by streets say residential sticker only. So they you can't park in a parking lot. You can't park in the area.
You're the person we were looking to talk to, MJ. We're really glad you called. 877-301-8970.
Here's Aisha and Chelsea. It's so hard to get to a beach. Crane Beach used to be accessible. Now you have to be waiting by a computer for the passes to open up, and they'll sell out in 7 minutes. It's also really competitive and expensive to find public pool access and swimming lessons for your kids. You have to be ready at 12 a.m. to sign up. Yeah, we do have a lot of pools in Boston. They're not open yet. I don't think they're open yet in Boston, but they're pretty damn crowded pools.
I forgot you. Who's with us on Tuesday? Katie Theorides.
Yeah, we can talk to her about this.
Who's the head of trustees of reservations. Probably going to cancel after this discussion. Let me ask you the question we ask almost every day about a different topic. I know it's a stupid question, so it doesn't merit a serious answer. Dylan Fernandez is the state rep. I think he's from the Cape or something.
Yes, he is. We've
had him on the show. Who's proposed a simple thing. If you get state money, then since it's all of our money, you got to provide reasonable access. Why would that bill not pass maybe in 30 seconds? I understand if you're a state rep from Scituate or from Marshfield, okay, take those away. For the 90% of reps who are not representing a community that has restricted beach access, why would they not vote for it like today and put it on Governor Healey's desk?
Well, I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
But people who own waterfront property tend to be wealthy people.
Ding, 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 ding.
And perhaps those people are donating to the coffers of other state reps, so they will stay with them on the beach issue. I'm not sure, but that's a possibility. 877-301-8970 is the number. By the way, we're talking about beaches. You know, they have this whole list. It was from the Washington Post about beach etiquette. You mentioned people sitting right next to you on the beach.
Worst.
There's all these beach etiquette things, like people leave trash on the beach.
Horrible.
Listen to this. This is a great story. This was in Florida, actually. But there was a guy down there from the Lifeguard Association. These people just left all their trash on the beach. And he got in his lifeguard bus and he chased them down the beach with the siren on, made them all go back and clean up the mess. Isn't that a great story? But there's all sorts of etiquette issues, like shaking sand out of your towel. Kids do this all the time. Kids go running by you, you're all lathered up with your sunscreen. The kids go running by you and get you all full of sand. As this one person says, what happens when you're all lathered up and you get covered in sand is you turn into a sugar donut, basically, sitting there on the beach. And feeding the seagulls, which are getting very aggressive, Jim.
By the way, that, in all seriousness, that should be a felony.
Feeding the seagulls?
Because what do they do? You ever had your sandwich eaten
Oh,
by
absolutely.
a seagull?
Absolutely.
Is that the most heartbreaking thing? You buy a sandwich, you wait in line for an hour and a half to get on the beach, and you're about to pick it up, and a damn seagull eats it because the person next to them is eating it, feeding them fries.
Or it's even good, I've seen this happen where somebody has their sandwich like this, and the seagull comes down and takes it right out of their hand, about 3 inches from their mouths.
By the way, Jamie has a question for you. He says, I don't know the answer, but you were talking about Marshfield situated. Can the public access the beaches of Malden?
We don't know. I'm still trying to figure out where Malden is. And when I let you know,
I think that was the point.
Where Malden is. Okay. If they have any coastline in Malden, I don't know.
So. Okay, Ann in the car.
Thank you for calling.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, thank you so much for highlighting this issue.
Thanks.
I'm from Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Rhode Island has, in their constitution, shoreline access guaranteed.
Oh.
Now, granted, we've had some issues as to where the line is for people who own property.
Yeah.
But we recently passed legislation that quantified it pretty clearly. And, I also grew up on the Kickamute River where we had public right-of-ways at the right on the water.
Oh, my God.
So why isn't Massachusetts looking at putting a referendum up to put it on the Massachusetts Constitution?
That is brilliant. And by the way, the only reason the legislature doesn't pass it, I was just thinking of the question I asked Marjorie, is because they're on vacation for 5 months, so they don't have time to pass it. And that's a brilliant idea. It should be a ballot question, and it would pass, I'm assuming, 90 to 10. And you're a genius. Thanks for the call.
We got a couple of other people from Rhode Island who are saying the same thing. Ample parking, beautiful beaches, friendly people, great facilities, slightly warmer water, says a Rhode Islander. I'm getting chastised from the texters who said they have been accosted trying to walk on beaches on Cape Cod.
People don't allow it.
Yeah, well, I guess.
You're friendly with the people down there.
Well,
by the way, I didn't want to tell the story.
Usually,
Marjorie is not on the beach. She and her sister have a house, and it's near a lake.
Yeah,
I went down there. I drove there. She wouldn't let me park there to go to the lake. I mean, draw your own conclusions. It was outrageous.
I have, when you walk on the beaches near Craigville Beach, people may know Craigville Beach is a great big beach down the Cape. It's a public beach. But when you walk down there, it's so amazing to me how even on a hot summer day, there are all these gorgeous houses. You don't see anybody.
I know, that drives me out of my mind.
You don't see anybody, so maybe that's why. Maybe I'm in places where no one's there to come out and shoo me away. Paul from Wellesley, thank you for calling.
Hey, Paul.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to share a little bit, because this is a subject that's of pretty good interest to me. I was raised in a town called Duxbury, south of Boston, and we used to go to the beach every day almost. The real interesting question is access to private property that is on the water. And I looked into this at one point. I haven't looked at it lately, so I don't know. But I just wanted to share. What I discovered at the time was this issue goes back to colonial times. And the water access was part of how you could hunt and survive and get animals to eat, I guess. But my understanding of the law is that the issue is the intertidal zone that's between the high tide line and the mean high tide line and the low water line.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that if you are hunting or navigating,
I think you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
You can access that.
Yeah.
So what we used to do, or at least talked about doing a lot, was if you carry a bow and arrow or maybe a fishing rod, you can perhaps access that intertidal zone. And of course, if you're, I love boating, and if you're in a boat, and then obviously you're navigating, so you can get into that intertidal zone within the law. But there really should be.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I'm glad you called, because we've discussed this before, and I believe you're absolutely right. It's just, I don't know about you, Marjorie, I don't carry a bow and arrow with me that often. Do you, Paul? Or do you? Paul, that was good.
You have to make a
special trip.
A special trip. By the way, one thing about what Paul said, we often, again, criticize the legislature, and one state senator who deserved a lot of criticism was the former president, Bill Bolger. One of the things Bolger was fabulous on, even though he's unsuccessful, was providing beach access in situations like Paul from Wellesley is talking about. He didn't succeed, but he was right on the issue.
He was an Irish guy trying to get even with the people that thought there were a lot of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants that owned the property in the beach. That's not so much true anymore, but it used to be more true. And by the way, how about the people up in Salisbury? These are people that live on the water. They're worried about erosion. They paid $600,000 for this dune restoration project. This is a Globe story.
That was their own money, right?
That was their own money. Yeah. They all contributed for the dune restoration thing. And then right after they did it, this big storm came away and wiped out half of the sand. So they paid $600,000 and it got wiped out in 3 days, half of it. Imagine that.
Wow.
That'd be pretty depressing, Jim.
Very depressing.
Michael from Shrewsbury, what do you think?
Oh, hi. How are you?
I think we're good.
Could I have a bagel with cream cheese? We're good.
Listen, we're not that busy. Why don't you have your breakfast and we'll wait until as soon as you're done, we'll talk to you. Go ahead.
I was waiting. Listen, this is a little different.
Okay, good.
Years ago, I ran the Falmouth road race.
Yes.
It was a charity thing.
Supposedly the most beautiful road race in America.
Gorgeous.
Go ahead.
It was absolutely beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, the guy that organizes is a lawyer.
Yeah.
This is lawyer rich people tricks.
Yeah, I got you.
Have a party at his place in Falmouth.
Love this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's lovely, big backyard, 3 or 4 houses there, big backyard. The outlet is onto the backyard outlets onto like a bay. Okay.
Yeah.
A really nice bay. So I say, okay, this is so beautiful. Here's the trick. The guy had gotten 4 or 5 of his neighbors to call this park a park.
Yeah.
And they designated a park. Mm-hmm. There was access, but nobody knew that it was actually a park. No sign, no nothing. He laughed. We have this beautiful property we all use, and nobody else can use it, and it's tax-free. So I wonder how many people are actually doing that kind of rich people trick thing. Yeah.
Can I say two things? One, I don't give a damn about that. What I do care is, what are you having on your bagel? What do you have on
I'm having plain cream cheese.
Oh, well, what kind of bagel? What kind of bagel?
Poppy seed.
That's the best you can do?
Michael, I am interested in the rich people trick, as you called it. What do you mean? They declare it a park for? Yeah,
that's what he said.
How do you do that? You go to the town hall and
it's
ask
a park.
Make it a
I
park.
hereby declare this a park.
They designated a park.
Yeah.
So now it's a park. So now it's not taxed. It's their backyards are all together. Looks out onto the water, and nobody in the world would ever know that you can have access to that. It looks like absolute private property. I couldn't believe it. It was beautiful. He's chuckling about it. I'm like, man, this is not right. This is not right.
They're all carrying bows and arrows, too, by the way, probably. Michael, that was an excellent call. Good luck with lunch or breakfast or whatever it is. We appreciate your call.
Okay, we're talking about blocked off beaches.
By the way, does this aggravate you as much as it aggravates me?
Well, it does, because it's going to get hotter and hotter every year. And when it's 95 degrees and you can't get to a beach and the pools are all crowded and there's no place to park, I mean, it's tough.
Well, the only good news, Marty, in fairness, is the water is coming to us. So, I mean, maybe you can't get to what have been beaches traditionally.
Well, that's right.
But Brookline will have a beach, Cambridge will have a beach.
You will be able to go down to the seaport, and the sidewalks will be flooded, and you can walk around the seaport. Maybe you'll be able to swim around the seaport pretty soon at the rate things are going. We're talking about blocked off beaches and how we ought to behave ourselves on Memorial Day this weekend. If you do go to the beach, you shouldn't blast your boombox and annoy everybody on the beach, and you shouldn't cover people with sand with your kids' towels or your kids running around the beach. 877-301-8970 is the number if you want to call us here.
Days on the world. This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And MFS Investment Management. For 100 years, MFS has been committed to helping investors, investment professionals, and institutions build secure futures. You can find active investing strategies and insights at mfs.com. And Innuendo in Natick, presenting Hunter Douglas Duet Architella PowerView shades for your home and office. Hunter Douglas PowerView Automation, measured and installed by their technicians at Innuendo and Innuendo.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're about 12 minutes away from some fabulous music. We heard it this morning. So stick around. And in the interim, we continue to talk about beach access, which is almost non-existent in Massachusetts to mere mortals, unless you live in one of these communities. And we talked about this bill filed by Representative Fernandez that would say if you're a community on the coastline and you get money from the state, from all of us, to improve or fortify your beach, then you got to provide reasonable access to everybody in Massachusetts, which they don't. Most recent reporting by our colleague Chris Burrell, it's a few years old, says roughly 12% of the beaches in Massachusetts coastline is available to everybody, which is insane. 877-301-8897. If you also want to talk about beach etiquette, that's fine too.
Jenny Rhode Island says private ownership in Rhode Island is to the high tide mark, and the General Assembly
that's much better.
Last year passed a law extending that to 10 feet behind the high tide mark. So that gives you plenty of room to be playing frisbee.
You know what I think the problem is here? I think we discussed this before, that if the state tried to do that, there might be a taking of property issue and without adequate compensation. By the way, we are told...
They'd have a huge lawsuit on their hands is what they'd have.
Yeah, we have someone in the audience who lives in Rhode Island who's upset about the conversation because they're sick of Massachusetts drivers clogging up their beaches. Who is that, by the way? Where is it? Can you get out of here, please? Thank you. No, we're happy to have you. And I'd feel the same way, but it's not going to change.
And somebody else just texted, Monique in Lowell says, an $80 state park pass gets you into Salisbury Beach State Reservation and all the state parks for a year. It's a great beach and a great deal. She said she's only been shut out once in many, many years of trying to go there. So there you go.
There you go.
877-301-8970. Lisa and Beverly. What do you think, Lisa?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, good morning.
You too.
I live in the North Shore, and I'm just a stone's throw from a public section of the beach. I say public in quotes because it's not really public. It's just for the residents. But that's only a portion of the beach. The rest is backed up by private property, and you can't access.
Great.
And so when my daughter was a freshman in college and she was home for the summer, she wanted to just, go to the beach every day. And I said, well, you can't do that. You've got to get a job. So she got a job with the security company that the private owners have hired to keep people off the beach.
Oh, God.
So she was able to sit in the chaise lounge right in front of the, private section and tell people they can't get there. But, of course, she didn't do it that much because they hired so many kids that they barely called her. So I told her she had to get a different job.
That is what we call a cruel irony. I mean, that's horrible. By the way, Lisa, when you talked about private beaches, the homeowners, Marjorie says just walk down the beach, you'll be fine. You probably get shot. But she says not a problem. And do you have any experience trying to walk down those beaches where homeowners claim rights?
Oh, yes. They have a security person.
There you go, Marjorie.
And it's usually, like a college kid. And they walk toward you and say, no, you can't access it.
Okay, I think that's the truth. Hey, Lisa, say hi to your kid for us. We appreciate the call.
Elizabeth from Rhode Island just texted to say Fisher Beach in Truro. Do you know that beach,
Of course
Jim?
I do.
Has a town access point, been there forever, but recently new signs have gone up by adjacent property owners stating it's private. No one used to care. Now new owners are staking their claim.
I didn't know that, but I've been to that beach.
You may be arrested this summer, Jim.
I've been.
It could be all over for you.
I've been to that
They won't be able to
beach.
miss you on the beach. Jim wears very colorful bathing togs.
How do you know what I wear? I mean, what do you...
I've had reports. People are embarrassed. The whole family's embarrassed. They won't go to the beach with you. Bill in Ipswich, thank you for calling.
Hello, Bill. Hi, Bill.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on Salisbury Beach.
Oh, please.
In addition to the money that the homeowners paid, the state has just agreed to give $1.7 million to re-nourish that beach.
Yeah.
I think that's the wrong approach. And unfortunately, the way the system is set up now, all the money is going into building infrastructure, building seawalls and jetties to try to stop erosion, which you really can't do.
Exactly.
As opposed to having money to buy out houses. So it would make a certain amount of sense that when you have houses that have, been totally destroyed, to simply buy that person out at fair market value, and then turn that into public land, and it might become part of a national seashore or a wildlife refuge or similar properties like that.
Bill, that's a wonderful idea, but there's a second idea, which is just don't pay for it. I mean, they chose to live there, and with knowledge that they were by the beach, they got to enjoy all the joy of the beach, and now there's a downside, and that's the risk that one takes as a private property owner. And by the way, there's some place, I can't remember, it's not Plum Island, it's some place we've talked about in the past, where the federal government has not only rebuilt these homes, but rebuilt these homes again after a first spending. And it's just, and most politicians are frankly, don't have the courage to do either what you want to do, Bill, which I guess is the sane middle approach, and what I want to do, which is you're on your own. Bill, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Oh, Bruce is calling from Marshfield.
Hey, Bruce.
One of the towns pulling a fast one.
Oh, wait, he's a waterfront property owner?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, this is going to be great. Hi, Bruce. How are you?
Give us a scoop.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
Long-time listener.
Thank you.
Second-time caller.
Thank you.
Do you live on Bay Avenue Beach?
No.
Okay.
No,
all right.
I don't.
Just checking.
Go ahead.
That's where a lot of stuff is going down there on Bay Avenue Beach. But go ahead.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, my family's owned this property since 1955, and recently it has gotten totally out of hand when what we consider the public beach, it's public to Marshfield residents only.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years ago, they opened it up and said, okay, on days that aren't busy, when there's a few open parking spaces, we'll let out-of-towners come in and pay $20 for the day. And when the lot fills up, they come down my street. They think that they're going to have access to the private beach where all the homeowners are. They park in our driveways. And last Labor Day weekend, I had two guys, father and son, sitting in beach chairs blocking my driveway. When I asked them to move, they started swearing at me, cursing. I had the blinker on in my truck. I finally got them to move. They kept cursing. They kept arguing with me. I called the police. They got upset, picked up a rock, threw it at me. Luckily, he missed me.
Wait, the police threw it at you? Or
No, the guys in the beach chairs.
I'm sorry.
No,
sorry. Okay.
So,
go ahead. What's the end of the story?
Police show up 35 minutes later, and they tracked the person down. They're not even a Marshfield resident. The person was from Dedham.
Oh, no.
Those people from Dedham.
Gotta watch them every second.
They are really lawbreakers.
But
That's
Bruce,
horrible, by the way, sitting in your driveway. I agree
the
with
thing is, Marshfield got a lot of money from the state. I think it was over $1 million from the state. So how do you justify that if you're not going to open the beach up to
Excellent question.
to people that paid for it?
That's the other end of town.
Okay.
That's a good point.
That's the other end of town.
I'm with you.
Where we are, we paid for our seawalls years ago.
Yep.
So this is private beach.
Okay.
It's for the residents only.
Okay, so Bruce, if somebody walks across your beach, are you going to come out with and shoo them away, or what's the situation?
No, that's Duxbury and Kingston.
Oh, that's you don't shoo anybody away in Marshfield. Okay.
Yeah, Marshfield's a little more blue collar, so we let them do that.
By the way, Bruce, just to give you a heads up,
or a little more blue blood.
Marjorie and I on Sunday will be using our bows and arrows to go after a few flounder in Marshfield. So if you see us there, please say hi. Bruce, thank you for your call. It was an excellent one. We really appreciate it.
I didn't know Duxbury. What did you say? Duxbury and Kingston are more blue blood than Marshfield?
That's what he said.
I did not know that.
Well, I mean, obviously he knows what he's talking about. He lives there.
Here's somebody that's from the thick of it. Nancy in Plum Island.
Oh, hi, Nancy.
You guys are in big trouble up there.
Yeah, hi.
We're doing our best out here.
Yeah. I mean, that road, there's that road, Nancy, that goes to Plum Island, that the marsh is like practically an inch from the side of the road.
Yeah, it really is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's tough to live on an island sometimes. But so my experience And we live on the basin side, so we don't get as many people, but we absolutely get people over. They walk around the corner, and it's fine. Like, we love having people enjoy our beach. But the problem is some people. My neighbor down a few ways is in her 80s, and she looked out her window last Memorial Day, and there was a family up in her yard on her patio, sitting at her furniture, eating their lunch. And she went out and said, "This is my yard." And the father looked at her and said, "I paid for parking. I can eat wherever I want."
Oh, my God.
Wow.
We also the same weekend had a friend. So a lot of us keep our boats moored in the basin.
Yeah.
And we have small skiffs to row out to them.
Yeah.
We had a father and a 3-year-old unclip one of the skiffs, proceed to take it in the water, and start rowing with no life jackets on towards the mouth of the Merrimack, which is one of the most dangerous mouths in the country.
What happened?
And we had to run after him and scream at him.
Yeah.
And finally he pulled it over into the sand, and he said, "Well, I thought they were for everyone."
Well, I mean, honest mistake. No?
But Nancy, one thing before you go. I mean, Plum Island has had houses teetering there for quite some time. I mean, they're going to go sooner or later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of problems with people walking on the dunes. We have a lot of problems with people just not respecting where the paths are and all that. I mean, it's tough. It's tough everywhere. Climate change is real. I mean, I've lived here for a long time, and we're, hanging on for right now, but it's scary.
We wish you luck, Nancy. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it really is. It really is a sad situation because they're beautiful houses and they're right in the beach, and now they're like practically, like I said, some of these houses are teetering, and I don't even know if some of them are safe to go into anymore. Anyway, we are done. I don't think we solved this issue. I think it's fair to say that the people that have the houses in the water are not that keen about the people on their patios eating their lunch, Jim. And Bill is not that keen about people sitting in his driveway either. So people are maybe overstepping their bounds.
I have to say, I'm into public access. I'm not sure I'd want somebody having lunch on my porch. I think that's a line.
Okay, after a quick break, time for Live Music Friday. If you're looking for an affordable musical festival to go to this weekend, I mean, there's Boston Calling, which is great, but it's a lot more money. Club Passim's Campfire Festival has been going on for years, and they've got a great lineup. Going to hear all about it up next from organizer.
When it comes to higher ed, it's not just students who take out debt. Universities owe billions.
So the fact that they took out that much money to build the dorm halls and dining's still a student concern, that's really wild to me.
Most of the borrowing is for buildings.
We want the buildings to be beautiful and we want them to have that original character, but that costs money.
Wave pool, cool kitchens.
Learn more about the other kind of college debt on our podcast, College Uncovered. Find it wherever you listen.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting a collection of house museums and landscapes exemplifying 3 centuries of achievements in American architecture, decorative arts, and landscape design. Tickets and info at newportmansions.org. And Babson College, where you can advance your career with an MBA or specialized master's at the school ranked #1 in entrepreneurship by U.S. News & World Report. More at babson.edu/grad programs.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library. Thank you all. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Welcome once more to one of our favorite segments of the week, Live Music Friday. We all know Boston Calling is this weekend. You'll remember we had the outstanding Billie Dean Thomas last week. But if you're looking for something different to do this weekend, if you want to enjoy Boston's excellent live music without the insane price tag for a glass of beer, look no further than the great Club Passim's 26-year running Campfire Festival. It's happening tonight through Monday, Harvard Square. A full festival pass, we should mention, is only $30 with some incredible talent you'll hear about in a minute. Here with us at the interview desk is Matt Smith. He's the managing director of PASIM. Good to see you, Matt.
Good to see you.
Info and tickets are available at PASIM, PASSIM.org. But first, Nicolas Emden is a singer-songwriter hailing from Chilean Patagonia. He's the winner of the 2023 New England Music Award for Best World Act. He's helping close out the Campfire Festival this weekend, but he's helping us kick it off right now for Live Music Friday. He'll be playing his song, Solo Tengo Ojos para Ti. How'd I do? Thank you very much. Here he is, Nicolas Emden.
Todo pasa y yo como si nada. Solo oigo tu voz por la mañana. Cuando sale el sol y estás dormida. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Pienso en la primera vez que te vi. Entre tanta gente llegaste a mí. Con tu pelo crespo y tus ojos grandes, amor. Me miraste bien y dijiste: yo te conozco de alguna vez. Hace mucho tiempo nos conocimos los dos. Todo pasa yo como si nada. Solo oigo tu voz por la mañana. Cuando sale el sol y estás dormida. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Esa misma tarde te dije: vamos a caminar por ahí. No quiero que se nos termine el día. Miraste la hora y dijiste: es tarde, lo siento, me tengo que ir. Será para otro día o para otra vida mejor. Todo pasa yo como si nada. Solo oigo tu voz por la mañana. Cuando sale el sol y estás dormida. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Solo tengo ojos para ti. Thank you.
Nicolas Emden, one of the many performers who's going to be performing at Club Pasim's 26-year running Campfire Festival. You get tickets and info available at pasim.org. And the song, I'm not going to try it in Spanish. I only have eyes for you. And Nicolas is going to join us in just a second here.
That was great, Nicolas. Thank you so much.
That was absolutely gorgeous. I only have eyes for you. That's a love song. Did you write that one? He wrote it too. He wrote it too.
Just the drop. Perfect, yeah.
Before we get to find out from Matt about what's going on this weekend, tell us about that song.
That's a song. Well, the translation for that is "I Only Have Eyes for You." I don't know. What can I say? We all need love songs in our lives.
All need love songs, that's right.
Yes.
It was beautifully done.
Thank
so
you.
You're going to be one of many performers that's going to be on stage this weekend. So Matt, tell us exactly what's going on at Club Passim.
So we've got this festival that's going on for 4 days, all the way through Monday. It's going to start at 6 o'clock tonight on Friday and go to 11, and then from 2 to 11 on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
And you get this for $30?
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
How'd this thing come about?
We started it back in Labor Day of 1998 as a way to fill a kind of a dead booking weekend. You know,
Here's an honest man.
Yeah, well, a lot of touring artists don't want to play on the holiday weekends because they realize everyone's going to be out of town, and so we built something out of a really robust local scene, and decided to make this festival of people that are kind of more up and coming, not big name headliners, and really celebrate what we had going on right in our own backyard.
So if someone considers themselves up and coming, what do they reach out to you a few weeks ago and say, I'd like to participate in this? You're nodding?
Yeah, I mean, I keep a list throughout the year of people that reach out about playing that aren't ready to headline their own show yet, or maybe some that are. But it's a great way to both promote other concerts that people have coming up, but also to get them in front of a new audience.
Can you spend we want to talk about the current, obviously, but just for a minute, for people who are not familiar with Passim and its predecessor, I mean, from Bob Dylan to Baez, our good buddy who's with us regularly, Tom Rush, obviously when he was a literature major at Harvard, going over there. I mean, the history is incredibly rich here.
It is, and it continues, through people like Josh Ritter and Lake Street Dive, and that just keep coming. New generations after new generations keep coming through the room because it's an incubator room. It's where people get their start.
We talk about an incubator room. Almost every week when we do Live Music Friday, somebody has come from Berkeley, and you're somebody else. So tell us your deal. You came here from Chile.
I want to hear about Patagonia in a minute too.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Oh God, I've seen my daughter went there. The pictures are unbelievable. Yeah. But tell us how you came here and Berkeley's influence on your career.
Well, I came here on 2014,
yep.
And I was looking to do a program that it's like very specific. I started doing conducting for musical theater back in Chile.
Really?
That's my other side.
Oh my goodness!
on music, and
conducting the orchestra for musical theater.
And music
cool.
directing, singers and all. So I found this program. I went to Berkeley Valencia first because they had a summer program that was like specifically for conducting. And then I was like, I need to, dive into this. So I did a 2-year program over there. I met amazing people from all over the world, and I had my music, it's always in my backpack. I started writing songs since I was 18 years old, actually. And I had albums that I've done in Chile, so I brought all that with me. And I started a band here, and I started performing and writing more songs here. A lot of influence right now in the songs that I started writing after I arrived here on being away from home.
You must miss it.
Do you not love, almost everybody who's an artist who comes on the show, who's like Brian O'Donovan's great thing, every Celtic thing he did, they love performing in festivals like this where there are a ton of some people are not quite as accomplished, but brilliant and young, some more accomplished. That's the feel is wonderful, right?
Absolutely. I was talking the other day with a friend. I feel so grateful that we have a place like Passim here because it's such a gem and it's so unusual. I've played all over my country and here in a couple of different states and all, and having a place like Passim, I really feel that there's such a community there that it's passionate about live music and an incubator again, because it's something that I say this in my shows as well. The fact that we're still getting together to hear live music, it's incredible.
Especially now, you need live music,
yeah.
Right?
And we're still doing that.
I want to get back to Matt a little bit more about the festival in a second, but I'm embarrassed to say I do not speak Spanish, which is inexcusable in 2024. I allegedly speak French, which is even more embarrassing. I don't understand what you're singing. I'm totally into the music. So what is it with a guy singing in Spanish to an English speaker only, totally getting into it? I mean, what is that? What's that connection?
Well, I believe in the language of music, and that's what got me in the first place. I started listening to the music that my dad showed me, the Beatles, Cat Stevens, and I didn't I didn't speak English then.
But you still felt it.
And I could connect with it, and that's a thing, and that's a fact.
So who else besides Nicholas? I mean, what's the range of people, players, music we're going to hear?
We tend to keep a tally of all the different kinds of instruments that show up throughout the festival. There's going to be music from around the world, because that's the great thing about our local scene, is there are people from all over that come here for music and music education.
Do you come and attempt to get in whenever you want, because it's long hours, right?
Yeah, people can kind of come and go as they please and catch a little. That's why we try to keep the price low so that people can experiment. They can try out something that they don't know already.
What are the hours for the 4-day?
It's from 6 to 11 tonight on Friday, and then from 2 to 11 Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
And for people that haven't been there, you tell people what the whole venue is like over there.
It's a small room. It's only 110 seats in there. It's a seated listening environment. It's almost like a micro theater. Where people come and they really, really focus on what's going on.
Well, because you feel the performers perform for you in that kind of venue.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable.
But logistically, how do you do that? Because as you say, it's 150 people, right? So
110.
You're probably going to get a lot more people there. So you have to kind of take turns? I mean, how does it work?
Well, people do come in for part of the day and catch a little bit. We also put speakers outside in the streets so people can hang out around outside and catch what's going on.
Yep.
And, we do end up really full at some points of the day. But people can just hang around outside and wait for seats to open up and really, get to experience a lot of incredible local music.
And do you have auditions for people every year? How does it work? Who gets to come?
It's invitational, but we get booking emails all the time, and so I'm kind of paying attention to folks that are, this is an entry point into coming to play at Club Passim. It's usually a lot of people's first time coming to play is at the Campfire Festival.
When are you playing if people want to go see you? When are you playing?
Monday, 8 p.m.
8 p.m. And what are you going to play for us in a minute here?
I'm going to play a song talking about writing about missing home. I'm going to play a song that it's called Llueve, which translates in It Rains.
You wrote it?
I wrote it.
I'm sure you did. You want to gently put the headset down and return to your venue over there? And we'll talk to Matt for a second while you're getting set up.
Yeah, we should say again, info and tickets are available at passim.org, and it's Passim. Most people know that, but in case they don't, passim.org. And it's called the Campfire Festival, Harvard Square. Yeah.
And here he is yet again, Nicholas Emden. Welcome back.
Cierro los ojos y respiro ese aire que baja del cerro para sanar tus corazones perdidos, las piedras que ya son heridas en nuestro andar. Sueños están dormidos, caminas sin rumbo y a toda velocidad, como un animal herido. Te escondes de todo lo que te haga desconfiar, y yo quisiera verte bailando como un zorzal, pero cada vez que te siento por dentro llueve, llueve en tus campos y en tu capital, llueve, llueve. ¿Cuánto daría por salirte a encontrar tus calles, tu gente, tus ríos, tu corazón roto, tu risa y sensualidad? Y desde aquí te sueño en un abrazo total, pero cada vez que te siento por dentro llueve, llueve. Cuando por aquí te veo pasar, llueve, llueve en mi corazón que lejos está. En las venas de tu gran ciudad llueve, llueve en tus llantos y en tu vanidad, llueve, llueve en tus sueños y en tu forma de amar.
We have been listening to Nicholas Emden. He's going to be.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Eastern Bank, committed to helping people and businesses prosper by investing over $240 million in local charities since 1994. Eastern Bank. Join us for good. EasternBank.com. Member FDIC. On A New Great Performances, award-winning Leslie Odom Jr. stars in this comedic play about a preacher determined to reclaim his inheritance. Don't miss Pearly Victorious, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Hi, this is Oedipus, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH. HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
From Tony Stone at the Huntington about the first woman to play baseball in male professional leagues. Plus, retired Judge Nancy Gertner on Alito Flaggate ×2, and on one of the craziest driving weekends of the year, we'll end the week with Am I the A-Hole? Backseat Drivers edition. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. The United Nations highest court has ordered Israel to cease its offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports.
The UN's International Court of Justice in The Hague ordered Israel to halt its offensive in Rafah, where hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have sought refuge from Israeli bombing elsewhere in Gaza. The court has no way to enforce its orders, but the case brought by South Africa has put international pressure on Israel to show restraint in its military operations in Gaza. Israel has argued in court that its operations are done in self-defense and are targeted at Hamas-led militants who attacked Israel on October 7th. Today's ruling was in response to one of several provisional measures added to a broader case that South Africa launched in December that accuses Israel of genocide. It could take the court months or years to rule on that charge. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
The governor of Louisiana is expected to sign into law legislation to classify 2 drugs commonly used to induce abortion as dangerous controlled substances. The drugs mifepristone and misoprostol are used for a range of other purposes. Rosemary Westwood from member station WWNO in New Orleans is covering developments.
State officials have been frustrated by residents who go online to order pills to induce an abortion. To crack down on that, they've opted for this designation to make them harder to get. The experts I've spoken with tell me that Louisiana has the right to designate a drug by making a general finding that it's a public health risk, as they've done here. We don't know if this will be challenged in the courts, though.
Under this plan, doctors would be tracked in a database every time they write a prescription for the 2 drugs. Louisiana's bill is the first of its kind in the country. New York City is stepping up efforts to move migrants out of shelters. NPR's Jasmine Garz reports a new rule allows people to stay in the facilities for a month before they have to find other housing.
New York will begin determining on a case-by-case basis whether to allow migrants to stay in a shelter for more than 30 days. In return, the city has said it will clear the backlog of immigrants who are reapplying for shelter space, eliminate the use of waiting rooms, and provide consistent access to bathrooms, showers, and food. Over 180,000 migrants have been in New York City's care at some point since 2022, and officials have said they are overwhelmed. Other cities have also begun narrowing access to shelters. Chicago has imposed a 60-day shelter limit on adult migrants, and Massachusetts has limited stays for families to 9 months. Jasmine Garst, NPR News, New York.
The jury is expected to begin deliberations next week in the criminal hush money trial of former President Donald Trump. The defense and the prosecution are set to present closing arguments Tuesday after Memorial Day. This is NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. New Bedford is looking at creating an authorized encampment for people experiencing homelessness. Last night, City Councilor Shane Burgo said a camp could serve as a stopgap emergency tool. He said it was cruel for the city to tell unhoused people that they couldn't live in tents under Route 18. The Standard Times reports that City Council voted to discuss the matter further. It's possible the MBTA Charlie cards could fade into oblivion, much like the long-forgotten MBTA tokens. Remember them? MBTA officials say they're looking at a new fare system now, possibly launching this summer, where riders will be able to tap their credit or debit cards or even use digital wallets like Apple Pay to pay the fare. A similar system is already in place and working pretty well, apparently, in New York City. The 53rd annual Fagawi sailboat race from Hyannis to Nantucket takes place tomorrow, according to the Nantucket Current. The race was on hiatus for 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and it made a very soft return to the water last year. This year, race director Shelley Crawford says the race is coming back to its original form, including the big Fagawi party tent that holds upwards of 450 people. And while the race itself is tomorrow, Fagawi race weekend starts today, runs through Monday. If you are in Hyannis or Nantucket, you pretty much can't miss it. Sports, Red Sox back at home at friendly Fenway this weekend with a series against the Brewers. 7:10 start tonight. Game 3 of the Professional Women's Hockey League is tonight with Boston at Minnesota. They're split at 1 game apiece. 78 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru, featuring the 2024 Subaru Forester Wilderness with 9.2 inches of ground clearance and all-terrain tires for off-road capability. Learn more at Subaru.com/wilderness.
Friday, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you very much.
Marjorie's applauding for herself.
I am applauding for myself. Yeah, that's right, because you got to show you're worth it, Jim. I'm applauding. And we are streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here again next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. Hello again, Jim.
Hi, and in the 1 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by Congressman and Marine Seth Moulton to talk about not just Memorial Day, but he's also going to talk about how he thinks Israel is prosecuting the war in Gaza and if there's a more humane alternative. In about 20 minutes, you're going to be introduced to the lead player and the director of one of the great shows I've seen of late at the Huntington, Tony Stone.
Yeah.
They'll join us in about 20 minutes. We're joined first, though, at the desk by GBH's Callie Crossley. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. You can catch that Sunday nights right here at 89.7 at 6. You can also hear Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. She also co-hosts, this is exhausting, by the way, she also co-hosts GBH's The Culture Show, which airs daily right here at 2, and it'll be live from the library. She will, of course, tell us absolutely nothing about it. And particularly important today, she is the longtime host of the great and groundbreaking Basic Black. Callie Crossley, it's great to see you.
Great to see you. Great to see you, Marjorie.
Yeah, thank you very much, Callie, for coming. People may know it's been a very difficult week here at GBH. We've lost some of our co-workers and the TV shows have been suspended here. Jim's old show, Greater Boston, and Basic Black, which has been around for a long time, and you've been the host of that for quite some time. So tell people about Basic Black in case they didn't see it.
Okay, so I stepped away from the hosting last October. I had been in the seat for a while when the show was going live. We did the show live prior to COVID, sending us back inside and to taping. The history is that it really grew from the community saying there are just voices and perspectives that are not on the air in these stories. So even if you had a story, we just heard one about the MBTA, let's say, and you would listen to the various outlets that would tell you what was going on, there was often lacking another perspective from some communities. And I say communities of color because it wasn't just black, it was called Basic Black, but we had folks from the Asian community, Asian American community, folks from the Latinx American community. So it was just to have a range of folks who had some commonalities in how they fit in America as we know it, and talk about those issues from their perspectives. And it was always eye-opening for people, just to get the kinds of experts that we have in these fields that people would never know about because they've only seen the same people over and over again, so there is that. And we did a variety of topics, everything from cultural stories like Prince, to hard issues about redlining, breast cancer, higher rates in black women, maternal, we've talked about here about black maternal health, and on and on and on. And the executive producer of that was Dolores Edwards, and most recently.
Great Dolores Edwards.
So
big loss.
So this is, and the show, 56 years, has
56 years.
Won all kinds of awards.
Longest of its kind in America, correct?
That is correct. Has won all kinds of awards, and is well known across the country, actually. So it's not something that is just only a local program. It's well known.
Well, the thing that to me was a fascinating thing about it was people of color talking about issues, and sometimes they were issues that might have been unique to people of color.
That's correct.
So instead of hearing me talk about something that wasn't going to impact me, I always thought I wanted to hear, for example, what Basic Black was going to say about flooding gay, what Basic Black was going to say about affirmative action, because it's a unique and different perspective.
And I think what a lot of people didn't understand is that there was a very healthy white audience, if you're going to split it like that.
We're looking at two of them, by the way.
Well, because you don't get that perspective.
Exactly. I've had all kinds of situations. There was a guy driving a truck downtown, this was years ago, and he literally stopped in the middle of the street and yelled at me, "I don't think I ever agree with you, but I like the show." I said, okay. So you wanted to have, and we, by the way, have people from across the political spectrum of ideological, across the ideological spectrum. So there were lots of folks who paid attention and who listened. They sometimes made news and, all of that. And it was a great experience for me when I hosted the show. It was some fun times in the green room with people, Well,
I just want to say, I know I speak for Marjorie, to Dolores, who you mentioned, to you, to the hundreds of guests, to the host. I mean, this was a world-changing kind of thing. And it changed our community in huge ways and informed our community, and you deserve congratulations. And I note that you mentioned Prince first, because of course she went to Paisley Park, and we heard that whole deal.
That is true.
That is true, exactly. But seriously, congratulations to you all and your colleagues for an incredible half-century, actually.
Yeah, thanks.
Talking to Callie Crossley.
So I guess it's okay, I don't know, we'll ask you, if celebrities are not influencing the polls. I mean, everybody got all worked up when Taylor Swift got all these people to vote, and she did get them to vote, but there are exceptions. I guess the Obamas influenced some people, but I don't know, is this a good thing?
You surprised by that?
That the Obamas do?
No, not that. Are you surprised other celebrities don't matter to people when they're voting?
Well, I would think Taylor Swift is a huge star. Somebody that said Taylor Swift or a Beyonce or a Bruce Springsteen, somebody that's huge. I don't know. I would think that they might influence some people. Apparently, they don't really.
Well, this new poll was very interesting. That people say no, they don't. It doesn't matter who it is, except for the possibility of the Obamas. Now, what I thought was interesting is that we who follow this very closely know that there was a group of people who were hysterical that Taylor Swift would persuade people and were saying all kinds of nasty things about the possibility that she would. And I think that stemmed from her several times going to her base of bazillions of people and saying, you have to sign up to vote.
Yeah.
Now, at that point,
she hasn't even endorsed Biden this time.
That's what I'm saying. She just said, you have to vote. And, she has a young audience. Yeah. And as we know, they haven't been often right at the ballot box. And so she said, this is what you have to do. So a lot of people signed up and registered to vote. I applaud her for that. So I don't know why that's negative. But other than that, beyond that, even if she got people to the polls, according to this survey, they weren't necessarily persuaded or would be persuaded by anything she'd say about who she might support.
The three of us, the two of you ridiculed me for about 2.5 years.
Oh, we did?
For my prediction that the next Democratic nominee for president in 2024 would be Michelle Obama. I assume it's time to admit I was wrong. Is that?
No,
not yet. Maybe not yet.
No,
it's not going to be. She's not going to be the
Why
nominee.
would she, in a million years, put herself through
Well,
this?
as I've said to both of you 1,000 times, we all saw Barack Obama, Senator Obama, on Tim Russert saying about a month before he declared for the presidency, I have no interest in running for the presidency. She cares about her country. She's wildly popular. She's incredibly strong. That's why.
Speaking of superficial media, did you see the pictures of him at the Kenya State dinner? He is totally gray now.
Yes.
He's totally gray.
Yeah.
And
he left early, too. Did you see that?
I didn't see
that. He did a quick exit from the thing.
But, it's very interesting. Presidents age tremendously in office. With one exception.
Yeah, Donald Trump, because he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
How stressful is that?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. George Bush aged so much. Barack Obama aged so much. They all aged so much, but not Trump.
If you're calculating the age based on the hair, there's a lot of conversation about whether that hair is whatever. So,
what's the conversation?
You know that he always pulls it because he says people insist that it's fake and it's not fake. So he always pulls it to say, "See, it's coming out of my head."
Okay,
but
not the color though.
I would assume there is color.
What are you saying? Joe Biden has hair plugs too, by the way.
You talking about Trump?
Yeah.
Trump. Yeah. I don't know what's going on with that hair. It's getting.
So what I'm saying is, if you calculate how someone has aged by their hair, okay, that's what I'm saying.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I thought you talked about some speculation about Obama's hair.
No. Obviously, Obama's letting his go gray. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Kelly Cross, we were talking about the survey in terms of the influence.
I'm not letting mine go gray.
Or we know that, Marjorie. Or I have not. Oh, yes, I did. Okay. What are we talking? Oh, the impact or non-impact of celebrities.
Oh my God.
I found another survey to be really heartening.
Yes.
Because Marjorie and I fight almost every day about the influence of Fox News, and she has proven to be right. When you look at all the polling it's done. However,
this is interesting.
There was a survey of news anchors on cable, on morning TV, on nighttime TV, and I think the lowest rated person was Sean Hannity.
I was surprised by that.
Really gives me a little faith. But tell us a little bit about the survey.
So it's really a who do you trust? As you know, there's been a whole lot of discussion about lack of trust in news outlets, period, certainly traditional ones. So this is a slight focus on who do you trust of the news anchors? And they looked across cable, they looked across network news, traditional network. They even have a category called outside, the people who left network news or cable and are now doing their own independent thing, which is interesting because Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo are 44 and 43%, respectively, and they're, they were running, when they were at CNN, their shows were back to back. But if in that same, they're called in the category called the outsiders, Megyn Kelly is at 40%. And Tucker Carlson is at 38%.
That's hardening. That's
Time with Sean Hannity.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting.
He's on Russian TV now, his show.
Yeah. Whereas the most trusted on network is Lester Holt.
I know. Well, he's great.
Yeah.
He's always been great.
It's been interesting.
Yeah, and I was surprised. I was surprised that it was as high as it is. I mean, 65 Lester Holt, 63% David Muir, and Norah O'Donnell 53, not as much. But that shows.
And I'm going to argue that has to do with being a woman too.
I think so.
I'm going to argue.
I think so.
Because if you have, certain traditional ideas about, who you want to present it, that may factor into it. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
We were in New Hampshire. We go to New Hampshire every 4 years for primary season. And you know the story. 4 years ago, I was on an elevator alone with Lester Holt, the Radisson Hotel downtown. I literally thought by the time he got to his floor that he thought I was going to kidnap him. It was one of, I'm looking at his face and he's trying to be friendly, but it's clear to him that there's something wrong with me because I am a huge, huge fan. And it was really heartening because allegedly nobody watches broadcast news.
Yes,
at
that's
least
right. That's what I
and
took
he's a broadcast news kind of guy.
Yeah.
So it really is.
And he also follow Peter Jennings into the bathroom.
I did follow Peter Jennings before he died, obviously, into the men's room because I didn't know that. I did. I was a big fan of his.
Okay.
His too. And okay yourself, exactly. That's exactly. But isn't this heartening? Don't you think?
It is heartening. For the morning news stars, what I think is fascinating is Al Roker is 64 and Robin Roberts is 64. Gayle King is the lowest at 53. And there's a bunch of other people in between, Savannah Guthrie and Michael Strahan. So, people are very thoughtful about their choices, I think. That's what it represents.
And people are very attached to their hosts.
I am.
I mean, I am too.
Yeah.
There are certain people I really like and certain
Anderson
people I just
Cooper,
can't.
we both are
I like
huge.
Anderson Cooper, yeah.
And, when it comes to weather, I like Dave Epstein, obviously, on our air, but did Cindy tell me? I mean, if Cindy didn't tell me, I
understand.
I can't go
There are a lot of people. No, by the way, people really are attached to
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Cindy Fitzgibbons at Channel 5.
Yeah. And it's funny when you think about when there were only three networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, which anchor you chose at night. Who'd you choose? Did you read Peter Jennings?
Well, I ended up working at ABC for a long time, so that was sort of part of the parcel. But
I really liked him.
Yeah, no, he was interesting.
Never went to college.
I was
about to say Peter Jennings. So he really thought that the job was not only to do what he had to do, and of course be trustworthy in delivering it, but it was a huge educational situation for him. Every time he interviewed people, he was so into absorbing all of that knowledge that he felt he lost getting because he didn't go to college.
Yeah, well, I thought he was an excellent newsman. Died young. Had cancer, I think, right?
Yes,
yeah, he died young.
This was unintentional, but I just realized that we didn't intend for almost everything we're talking about today to be surveys. But there was a survey out of it. Is it North Dakota?
Yes.
The 40% of the residents of North Dakota actually support the dog murderer, Kristi Noem.
Yeah.
So is that a high number or is that a low number?
Well, they pointed out that 58% said it was not justified, but I think 40% is pretty high to me.
Yeah, killing a dog. I think it probably is.
Remember some guy called us up the day we were talking about this and said in rural places people are shooting their dogs all the time. I hope that's not true.
He called from Oklahoma or one of those states.
He did.
Yeah.
Well, I thought the fact that it was so high indicated that, she definitely did not expect the blowback because she felt she knew her constituency. And so in revealing this, it didn't bother her. And by the way, just in case people forgot, it came from her memoir, No Going Back, The Truth on What's Wrong with Politics and How We Move America Forward.
Yeah, and she said she hated the dog.
Right.
And she dragged it back to a pit, and then she shot it.
That probably shouldn't have been in there.
Yeah, I don't know why she thought everything that was a good idea.
No, you know what the best part of that whole story was? I know we discussed this a few weeks ago.
She killed a goat right after that.
Well, that was a good part of the story
spree.
too. No, the best part was that this is all from her own book.
That's right.
Not only her own book, but then she claimed that she was taken out of context,
That's right.
even though it was her book.
That's right.
And then one of the hosts, I think it was even on Fox or something, which is incredible, Fox News, said, not only is it in your book, your voice is the voice on the Audible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's taken out of context. I mean, it's just... By the way, speaking of, what we haven't talked to you about briefly, because we talked to Chuck Todd and others about it yesterday, is the Nikki Haley flip-flop.
Wow.
Unqualified, he's a heathen, he's a whatever, and I'm voting for him kind of thing. And it leads me to think about the whole vice presidential deal.
Right.
Is it naive? Because I guess I am naive to think that even if you're in politics, doing a total 180 as she did, as the governor of New Hampshire did, as scores of Republicans did, who said that Trump was the Antichrist a few months ago, and all of a sudden he's the best candidate to lead the free world. What's your reaction when somebody does something like that?
You know what? I shouldn't be shocked, but I actually was shocked.
I was too, actually.
In this
instance.
It
seems so bad.
Well, it just seems like I thought that she was presenting a case. I believed her case as she presented it for herself. And I'm just surprised. I can almost understand if she said, listen, as she did, I think Biden's a catastrophe, so I don't know what I'm going to do here. I still hold by what I said about my concerns about Trump in a leadership position at the top, for running a country and the world, really, because if you're the president. But I don't know what to do about the fact that I also believe that Biden is a catastrophe. So that would have been a little softening, but to suggest, I was just talking all those weeks and months.
Well, she also says, I'm supporting him because he has the backs of our allies, which is totally untrue, and stands up to our enemies, Kim Jong-un and Putin, are his role model. I'm serious. I mean, it's preposterous.
And the basis of she sat right there doing the international negotiations.
Yeah.
So come on, she's the person that would know. And that was on the campaign trail, part of her saying, I'm scared about his ability to push the button or whatever. So yeah, I am shocked by that. And I also think this is why people just don't trust. So we're talking about lack of trust in the news media. We also have lack of trust among politicians. I firmly believe, call me naive, that if people take a stand on their position and they're not, it's not hate speech and they're not mean, they just present their stuff constructively and the way they believe, people have more respect for them.
Yeah.
Even if they disagree with them, they have more respect for them by holding to your position and presenting it.
Except, I don't want to belabor this, but there was a story in the Washington Post that said today, I think, about Republican legislators, like that guy from Oklahoma who was the sponsor of the immigration bill that got crushed when Trump said don't pass it, even though it may be good because it's going to help Biden forget dealing with the immigration issue. And the point of the Washington Post story was, and the word they used was, when you stand up for principle in the Republican Party, what you get in return is humiliation.
Right.
Which is Langford, that guy, I couldn't think of his name.
Yeah, James
Senator
Langford.
Yeah, it's really tough. In any case, we know you're not going to tell us anything about the culture show because that's what you do. That's at 2 o'clock today here live.
Well, I can tell you, we are going to talk about Apple's 100, top 100 albums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe the number? I love that album.
Yeah.
But still, were you shocked?
We're
not going to say what. I mean, the number one album.
Oh yeah. Well, not necessarily shocked. I'm. These lists always get a lot of discussion, so I'm not shocked necessarily.
I'm shocked. I love it, but I'm shocked.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you what it is. You got to listen to culture.
Right.
What are you doing Sunday night on the radio?
We're doing an encore. We're looking at the hidden stories from New Hampshire's Black Heritage Trail, and then we're encoring a book that I just can't say enough about. It's extremely compelling, personal story by Grace Alexander Hale about her grandfather, uncovering the fact that her grandfather was a part of a mob lynching. And so the book is called A Lynching, a Lie, a Reckoning. And it's written like a novel. It happened. And just, all that she went through and figuring out what was happening with her grandfather, whom she revered. And so it's very interesting. So that's on as well.
Okay, Callie Crossy, thank you very much.
And one more time, congratulations on your years of Basic
yeah.
Black and all your colleagues.
Several
and
people have
Edwards
texted saying that they're going to miss it very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Callie.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Callie Crossy. She's host of Unfiltered Radio with Callie Crossy, which you can catch Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6 o'clock. You can also hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. And, of course, she's very slippery about it, but she is co-host of GBH's Culture Show, which airs daily at 2 o'clock on 89.7 GBH. Right after we get done at 2 o'clock, it's right here today on Fridays, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Okay, after a quick break, we talk with the writer, director, and lead actor in the Huntington Theater Company's new play, Toni Stone. It is about the first woman to play professional baseball. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Boston is kicking off its unofficial start to summer this Memorial Day weekend with the annual music festival Boston Calling. The Cape just spotted its first great white shark of the season, and a look into what happens when first responders are priced out of the areas they're meant to protect. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Rockland Trust Bank. Their team is dedicated to bringing the vision of your business to life,
providing support and advice tailored to your specific goals. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And A Strange Loop, the acclaimed musical about a young, black, queer artist trying to make sense and a musical out of his life, through May 25th only. More at bostontheaterscene.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. In a little while, we're going to be joined by former federal judge Nancy Gertner. She's going to zoom in to talk about the Trump trial, where closing statements are going to be delivered probably on Tuesday, the two flags of Justice Alito, and a whole bunch of other things. So if the name Toni Stone does not ring a bell, it should. Stone was a true trailblazer, the first woman to play baseball in a men's professional league after taking Hank Aaron's slot when he moved from the Negro League's Indianapolis Clowns to the then Boston Braves. Stone's story is the focus of a spectacular new play currently showing at the Huntington. Not only was the show directed by the woman standing near us, Lydia R. Diamond, it was written by Lydia, too. Lydia, it's great to see you. Actress Jennifer Magbach, who is a force of damn nature on the stage. It is insane. It is. You know it is the lead character, Toni Stone herself. The show runs through June 16th at the Huntington Theater. And let me do a caution. If you plan to go to the Huntington Theater, go to the Huntington Theater. I attempted to go to the play 2 nights ago, and I went to the wrong theater. I went to the Calderwood. My second chance last night worked out, and it was great. To get tickets, you go to Huntington Theater with an R-E at the end, huntingtontheater.org. Jennifer, Lydia, congratulations. It's great to meet you both. Thanks for being here.
Well, as all the literature has pointed out, we've all heard of Jackie Robinson, we've heard of Satchel Paige, we've heard of, Babe Ruth, but I never heard, I think most people have never heard of Toni Stone. So tell us who she was, Lydia.
Toni Stone was, I know you've already said this, but she was the first black woman to play professional baseball. She played in the Negro Leagues. It is just remarkable because the thing about her is that she played as well and probably better than some of the men on the team. And the fact that we don't know her is the thing that, has been the most moving thing and the thing I feel most grateful for having been able to put her on stage, because we should know her.
So you are Toni Stone. I mean, you sort of Toni Stone.
Oh, no, she is Toni Stone.
Make us feel better. Did you know anything about Toni Stone before you did this?
No, and I was livid. I think as a black woman, we have... Sometimes the world gives us a very small Rolodex of who our heroes can be. So the fact that she wasn't on my Rolodex, I was pissed.
Yeah.
And when I learned about her, dived into her, I'm still, every day I marvel about who she was and how I didn't know what she contributed to the culture.
Can you tell a little bit more of the story? And people should go see the show, but flesh it out, Jennifer, if you would, just her story, how it happened and that sort of thing.
Toni Stone was the first woman to play professional ball on the Negro League, and she was ruthless. She knew what she wanted to do from a very young age, and she went guns a-blazing. She barnstormed, she picked up games wherever she could until the right people saw her, and then she was invited and earned her spot in the Negro League playing with the big boys, and she kept up.
Well, I think a lot of people, when they think of women playing baseball, they think of that movie that was with Madonna a few years ago, League of Their Own. Yeah. Tom Hanks was the coach, and there were all these other stars, but they were all white women.
Because African Americans weren't allowed in those leagues. So she went even further, found a way into something, even though there was an institution that could have been something she was in, but she wasn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't let. So she just got the racism from the white women, and then she must have gotten. I'm sure some of the guys supported her, but I'm sure there was a lot of sexism that she dealt with too. Tell us about that.
Yeah, pre-Me Too, where men had to be accountable for their actions. That's tough. And it wasn't just interacting with these men on the field. It was riding the bus with them. It was spending free time dealing with racism with these men. These men were her family. They were her lifeline. Even if there was racism, even if there was sexism, they were who she had when she was out on the road and when she was playing.
Do you play baseball?
I learned how to play baseball.
I was watching the beginning of the second act. You throw baseballs into the audience, soft baseballs, and I was watching and that was beautiful. You really have gotten it down, I should say.
Should we tell them about what we did?
Well, please.
What'd you do?
Yeah, we threw the first pitch out at Fenway.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And?
We did it at this. Oh, we were great. We did it at the same time. We both got it over the plate.
No.
Yes.
You terrified?
No, we were so chill.
Yes, you were. You were terrified.
It was scary. It was scary.
So, okay. I
Wait a
know
second. Jennifer's not answering the question. Was it terrifying?
You know what? I woke up early in the morning and I practiced for an hour and a half with one of my team members because I was like, I will not embarrass myself. So that helped a lot.
Okay, so you're playing baseball professionally now, really, because you're doing it in the theater every day. But you're not playing baseball. You're the director and you're the writer. So how long were you practicing to get the ball?
Oh, no. I'm better than she is.
She is better than me.
No, we were in tech at the time, so we were working these incredible hours, having rehearsals starting at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock for them, and you'd be at the theater until 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were like, okay, we can't do this, we can't shame ourselves. So every time they said hold, we were throwing the baseball back and forth across the stage.
Very well, it shows.
We practiced.
So Lydia, how did this happen for you that you decided to write this play?
An independent producer named Samantha Berry and the writer of the book Curveball, Martha Ackman.
Western Massachusetts.
We were both fellows at the Radcliffe Institute, but in different years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So we came to each other not even knowing that we had this in common. But they had this book, and they were thinking, I don't know if we have it adapted or have someone write a story about her, sort of inspired by the book. And I was busy. I didn't have a lot of time, and I owed people commissions, and there were some artistic directors who were already angry with me. So I said no, and they were so just read the book. And then I had the same reaction that Jennifer did to have. She was remarkable in every way. So there's the prowess on the baseball field, but also things like she played the drums. She married a man named Aurelius Alberga, who was 40 years her senior. And they loved each other very much, and her life is just sort of amazing. So I came to it because I read her book and thought, well, this doesn't make any sense, and whatever little bit I can contribute to helping people know who she is, I would be remiss not to.
But one of the things I'm really curious about, putting the race thing aside, I cannot imagine the Boston Red Sox, an all-male team, having a woman play with them. I just couldn't imagine it. So that's what I wondered.
She's the first woman GM in the history of baseball for the Miami Marlins a couple of years ago.
Well, and it's 2000 whatever. This is quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So how is it that these men said okay?
Well, I think there are lots of different things. I mean, there's the piece about how we don't know exactly, because no one's going to come out and say, oh, that girl, and blah, blah, blah. We know that America is racist, we know, and sexist, and we know that a team full of men who were raised in this sexist America may have initially had feelings about a woman being on their team, but I also think Toni Stone was remarkable.
Yeah.
And so she would have won them over.
Okay, just on sheer talent.
Absolutely, but there's also a way in the black community that we take care of each other. And I don't think that a bus full of men were going to let Toni Stone not be okay.
Well, also, what's said, you know this I'm sure better than I based on your research and whatever, is people who are around with Jackie Robinson said Jackie Robinson was the right person for the time. I mean, it was most young, black, incredibly gifted baseball players couldn't have done what he did. And you get the sense from your portrayal, at least I do, of Toni Stone, that she was the right person in that situation. Does that sound right to you or no?
Yeah, I think it's both. She was the right person for the right time, but she had met. It's like what people say about luck. There's no such thing as luck as, preparation meeting an opportunity. Yeah. I think the opportunity arrived and she had done the work to meet it. So, yeah, I think she was the right person for the time, but she was always going to be seen because she knew that she was always going to get there.
I don't want to be a total fanboy pathetic, but can I be for 10 seconds?
Go right ahead,
You're the
Jim.
narrator of this thing. You, Toni Stone. I mean, you're not Toni Stone, but you are Toni Stone. And what I do when I go to a play is I watch the audience. I'm sure, I bet you do too. You were there last night, weren't you, Lydia?
I was there for part of last night.
Okay, well, I was there for part of last night.
I've seen it a few times.
I had a feeling you might. But when I'm looking at the audience, I'm always watching how they're reacting to the players. And I don't mean baseball players, but the actors. And people felt, and I believe this, like you were talking to them. I mean, there really was not this deal that you were talking to the audience, which you obviously were, but you really could see, and I felt it, that you were talking to me, and which is really just surreal. So I heard you with Jared yesterday, and you two experts are talking line. I don't even understand what you're talking about. I know what I like, and when I see the staging of this thing, it's I don't know if it's dance, the movement of the players in this thing is just the staging, the everything. Do you want to talk a little bit about your team and how this incredible thing?
Absolutely. So we have this ensemble of 9 men, actors, amazing actors, and Tony Stone. And we have these design elements that are insanely beautiful. Colette Pollard did our set, and it's 2 stories tall and does all of these incredible, beautiful, amazing things. And we had our sound designer, Brian Lilienthal, who is one of your premier set designers and works all over the country and wins awards every time he blinks. I said set, I mean lights.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mara Blumenfield is our costume designer, who also is like rock star costume designer. And then you mentioned the choreography.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Ebony Williams?
Ebony Williams,
Yikes.
she's your hometown girl, and she's famous. And she's, I don't know if you've ever seen this little known pop artist named Beyonce.
Yeah, we saw the video.
But she
Single ladies.
she did this little all the single ladies.
Yeah.
Okay, if you look to her right, that is Ebony.
I know.
And sometimes she was like, well, I have to go to Paris. Doja Cat needs me. So she has done kind of amazing work with these 2 numbers that we have in the middle of the show that are pivotal to the story that we're telling. You missed it.
I know. By the way, I only got there for the second act, but she only went to the first act, so I shouldn't be criticized.
Between the 2 of us, we've seen the whole
play.
And we loved it, didn't we?
We're talking to Lydia R. Diamond. She wrote and directed the show Tony Stone. We're talking to the actor who plays Tony Stone, Jennifer Mugbach. I hope I pronounced that Mugbach. I got that right. So give people an idea, because you're doing baseball on the stage. So give an idea of what they're going to see when they go to the Huntington in terms of how you reenact a baseball game.
Hey, director.
Can I drink water?
Oh,
no,
yes,
you may not,
absolutely. Yes, you may.
It's a mixture of everything. There's dance sequences, but the dance sequences aren't this like, let's stop and dance. They're part of the story.
Yeah.
It's part of the history. There's baseball playing. There's beautiful, intimate scenes. When you think it's huge, it winnows down and becomes really intimate, and it has everything.
Yeah.
I'm biased. I think it's great.
And
when we're looking, can I just say, Doris Kearns Goodwin was here a couple of weeks ago about her latest book about her husband, Dick Goodwin, obviously. What is it called? Something, what's the
Love
title?
Story.
Something Love Story. It's beautiful. And when she wrote the book about Lincoln, Team of Rivals, we asked her, do you feel like you knew Lincoln? And she did. She matter-of-factly said, yeah, I feel like I do know Lincoln. Do you feel like I don't mean know about, do you feel like you know Tony Stone when you inhabit her person so incredibly?
Funny enough, I think our very last our very last preview, we were in the middle of working on something, and I went in a corner and I sobbed for our whole 10-minute break.
Oh.
Just sobbed. And it was a sob because I was exhausted, so tired, but it was a sob because I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulder, and there was this kind of psychological thing that was happening. And in that moment, I went, that's what Tony feels like. That's exactly what it feels like, being a woman, this person that didn't sign up to be this figure and this heroine and this symbol of something bigger and something better, and this woman that is working her butt off physically and trying to find her way in the sport and in life and in social expectations. And when I felt all those things on my shoulder, that's when I knew that I think I was getting something right.
Well, no, Jennifer had been getting something right from the first day of rehearsal. I would say she was getting something right when she came into the room and auditioned. So I understand. Because it isn't a one-person show in that we have this lovely cast of supporting actors who are engaged all the time, full stop. There's movement on the stage. People are moving furniture and things. But she pretty much does a one-person show and doesn't stop talking for 2.5 hours. And she's good, so you can come see the show. It's not a boring one-person show. It's just quite amazing. But this woman is phenomenal.
Are you exhausted? By the way, I meant to ask you that, and I couldn't read my writing. I'm glad you brought that up, Lydia. Are you exhausted? I mean, you move, and you don't just move. You move nonstop. Are you exhausted at the end of the night?
Yeah, but that's what it's supposed to be.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's supposed. It's Theater is the ultimate sharing medium. I am exhausted because I know that I've done something to affect you, viewers and audience members. The thing that's so beautiful about this show, and that's so different than one woman, one man shows, is that it's not about you watch one person do something. It's about you come and we all do something together. And that's what makes a difference. That's that feeling you had when you thought that I was speaking to you, because I was.
Well, you were. You know, Lydia, I'm sorry.
We're talking about, the show is Tony Stone. It's at the Huntington Theater. We're talking to Lydia Diamond, who wrote it and directed it. We're talking to Jennifer Mugbach, who stars as Tony Stone. You know, do we know what happened to the book that you based the play on? I know it diverts from that. But do we know what happened to her after her baseball playing days?
Yeah, she retired and she stayed married to Aurelius Alberga. Took care of him, and when he became very old, they were happily married. Stayed very engaged, sort of politically around baseball.
She?
Was finally honored a little bit, before she passed.
When you say politically engaged around baseball, what do you mean?
She promoted the sport. You know, she did talk shows. There are all these great little pieces of footage and of her. She did. She stayed engaged. She was lively. She coached. She's just an amazing person.
Yeah, it was in her blood. Even when she was supposed to be still, you know, in the certain time in your life when everyone tells you now it's time to calm down. She was like, but my internal rhythm doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
She biked around everywhere. She was engaged in the sport, helping people learn it, kind of teaching people and giving out that energy of love for the game.
Jennifer, if I say two more good things about you, can I get a hat? I can. Okay, so I will in the next couple. Can I tell you, you know, we started this conversation saying all four of us, thank God you're in that group, didn't know who Tony Stone was. We spend too much of our time on the show, Marjorie and I, apologizing for how little we know about Black history. There's a weekly guest we have on, Michael Curry, who's on the national board of the NAACP, who does a tutorial at the end of every segment for us. And the moment that both of us will stay with this is after we all learned, and I have to admit it, about the Tulsa race massacre because Trump's supposed to go there. We had a young man, remember the young black kid?
From Tulsa.
Who called from Tulsa, said he grew up in Tulsa, didn't know about it until he heard about it.
Because they didn't teach it in the
schools. Are we doing a better job, not just Tony Stone, are we doing a better job in America? Do we finally get it in terms of, well, you're shaking your head, so you answer first, Jennifer.
No,
I'm not going to disagree with her. No, I think we're trying to do a better job, and I think that we've come to a moment where people coming out of the pandemic and the great race reckoning noticed and heard for a second something that people had been saying all along. But no, we're banning books. You know, horrible things are happening.
I think we're going back.
We're going
How
back.
about Jennifer? Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think that we need to have more conversations about diversifying the canon of history. When I was in elementary school, and you go and talk to kids at an elementary school now, the model and the group of people that are supposed to be our heroes have been the same group of people for decades.
Yeah.
Let's diversify, let's add to it, let's be more current, let's go even more in depth in the past. It's just, we deserve nuance, we deserve more specificity, would be my take on it.
Yeah, no, it's the same people over and over again. That's absolutely true. The book, by the way, of Doris Kearns Goodwin is an unfinished
I'm so sorry.
love story.
It's
No,
great.
I knew it was a love story, something. I couldn't think of the adjective. Shame on me. But anyway, it's an unfinished love story. It's a great
It's
book.
not just about the good one, the history of from JFK
the 60s
to LBJ.
and the LBJ and Vietnam and all that kind of
Bobby
stuff.
Kennedy
It's really
without
good.
the worm in his head, Bobby Kennedy.
Well, congratulations to you both, and
It's
we're
unbelievable.
thrilled that you came in, and good luck with the run at the Huntington. And the name of the show, again, is Tony Stone. Oops, I should have to turn the page here. Is playing at the Huntington Theater. For more information or to book tickets, you go to, it's theater, by the way, with an R-E at the end, THEATRE, huntingtontheater.org, R-E theater, huntingtontheater.org.
One more second. What happens after what happens next with this?
After you see the show, you're going to go home and laugh.
I didn't mean that. After the end of the run, what happens to this fabulous
the show gets to live. You know, it's a different production in every city, and there are other theaters that will do it around the country. I'll keep writing plays. She'll keep being fabulous on television, film, and stage.
Well, you're both pretty fabulous. It was a great night, and I thank you both.
Yeah,
for
thank you very, very much
Thank you
again
so
for coming in. We've been speaking with Jennifer Mugbach and Lydia R. Diamond, and the show
Go to
again
the
at
show.
the Huntington Theater, the world debut production of Tony Stone. Thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
After a quick break, we're going to talk to retired federal judge Nancy Gertner. We're going to talk to her about the continuing disgraces involving the Supreme Court of the United States, and maybe we'll get a prediction what she thinks is going to happen in the trial of the former president, Donald Trump. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The news and conversations you're hearing today have been brought to you in part by GBH Sustainers, who make their gifts to the station in small monthly payments, like $10, $15, or $20 a month. It takes just a few minutes to enroll, and once you do, your ongoing monthly support will join with others to keep this station running strong. Learn more about how to become a sustaining member online at gbh.org/sustainer.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Andrew Lloyd Webber, Liz Cheney, historian Annette Gordon-Reed, and news anchor Chris Wallace. bostonspeakers.org.
Hi, I'm Al Davis, host of Jazz Music on GBH, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston.
Symbol of supporting a Christian nation and the insurrection. So, I don't, how many flags do we need, or how many? Are we going to just?
There is a 2-flag political limit here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that. I mean, I really just started to write an op-ed that began with, I thought I had run out of indignation.
Yeah, really?
So there are 3 things about this. One is that the standard is whether or not, the standard for disqualification is whether or not your impartiality could reasonably be questioned, right? Not whether you are in fact impartial, but whether it could, the appearance of partiality. And the purpose of the rule has to do with the integrity, public confidence in the jury. In the justices. So he's already essentially thumbing his nose at the impact of these acts on the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, which is unbelievable. Second, these are intentional acts. My understanding is that the upside down flag went up days after January 6th. Mm-hmm. The one in his beach house had been up for some time. So this is not, a whoops. Geez, I didn't realize, the Republicans talk about Ruth Ginsburg described Trump as a faker during the electoral campaign in 2016. I mean, one can imagine a misspeaking. But this is not misspeaking. This is putting a flag on your house. The third thing is, this is unbelievable in these times. I mean, how, in these particularly fraught, polarized, divided times, and I guess I said 3 things, I'm going to say a 4th. I keep on using this analogy to all of the reporters I talk to. My husband, as you know, was the legal director of the ACLU while I was on the bench. I'm trying to think of a situation where, let's say, he was suing the police, and he wanted to have a, defund the police sign on our house. The answer would be no. The answer would be, you want to put that flag up? It's either you or the flag. It would be unimaginable. And so it says something again about the impunity that Alito feels, that he thought that this bogus explanation, my wife made me do it.
I know.
Enough to justify. That it really points to the impunity. He's thumbing his nose at all of us in a way that really casts profound doubt on the legitimacy of this institution today.
We're not going to do what we do with you every time there's a Supreme Court outrage, because there are too many, and say, why doesn't Roberts speak up, the Chief Justice, and why don't the 3 liberals speak up? We're not going to do that again. We're going to take a different tact. Senator Whitehouse from Rhode Island was on with us yesterday. Obviously, he spends more of his time talking about dark money in the Supreme Court, doing these fabulous tutorials. He supports both reforms that you and Larry Tribe have talked to us about. expanding the size of the court, term limits, neither of which is going to happen in this world in the near future. We talked about how the ethics, in quote, rules established by the Supreme Court themselves a few months ago have no enforcement mechanism. But he was pretty optimistic about something we want to play for you and see if you agree with his optimism. He's talking about the power of the Judicial Conference and the role that a local judge, David Barron, could play. Here he is.
But I think the real pressure is going to come from the Judicial Conference. David Barron, our First Circuit Chief Judge, sits on it. Will Smith, a former Rhode Island District Court Chief Judge, sits on it. It's a very distinguished panel, and I think they're getting increasingly fed up with the way the Supreme Court justices are behaving, and they have fairly considerable authority to look into recusal and disclosure and other questions.
Pipe dream stuff, or is the senator on to something?
That they will look into recusal, I have no doubt. That they will do something enforceable with respect to recusal, I am skeptical. And I'm skeptical to some degree for the same reason, the related reason why the three liberal justices haven't spoken up. I can't. The Judicial Conference is made of judges from all across the country. They're chief judges in all of the districts of the country. Judge Barron, I have no doubt, is alarmed by this. Judge Smith in Rhode Island is alarmed by this. Can they carry the day with the rest of a generally, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of not particularly aggressive judiciary? It is doubtful to me. In other words, it would take an extraordinary gesture for them to say there ought to be enforceable ethical rules. Alito and Thomas ought to recuse themselves. That will take gaining the votes of the rest of the bench. And one of the things we've seen with the Trump cases is that the bench is very risk averse.
Yeah.
Very risk averse.
But I keep thinking, to me, this is just so outrageous. You talk about that you can't get more indignant than you already are. But I can't imagine. Can you imagine if Sotomayor had a keep your hands off my uterus thing on her front lawn, or some other thing that they were going to have a decision about? What would hit the fan? So to me, once again, it's the
even though that would not be as bad. She's not talking about overthrowing the government of the United States.
No, but I'm
not
saying
defending it.
To show bias.
Right.
And the GOP would go absolutely insane. We'd never hear the end of it. And it just seems like this Alito thing, there have been stories, we've talked about it, other people have talked about it, but it's sort of like, it's a major catastrophe, it seems to me, in terms of the credibility of the Supreme Court. It's just really gets you in the gut.
I think that to some degree, we've all become immunized to the outrages of this president. We're now immunized to the outrages of this court, and I think you're quite right, and we shouldn't be immunized to the outrages of this court. But that as I said, there was an in-your-face intention about these flags, that is extraordinary. The Republicans do a false equivalence between what Ginsburg had said about Trump, which she apologized for, and who knows whether she would have recused herself from Trump cases. We don't know that, but given her usual ethical proclivity, she may well have done that. Sotomayor wrote a book and used court facilities to write the book, and when she was getting some profits from it, and that probably was an oversight and ought to have been addressed. This flag stuff is intentional and in your face. And it comes, by the way, after the revelations of Alito and Thomas essentially doing an end run out of the ethical rules that apply to them about disclosure of people supporting them, about disclosure of fancy trips. It really relates to something that the White House Commission on the Supreme Court reflects, which is this is an enormously powerful institution, more powerful than any other Supreme Courts across the Western world. it is one with wholly and completely without accountability. And that's what we're seeing now. I mean, I think that the Democrats, even if they don't have the votes, should introduce resolutions to expand the court, and pass an enforceable code of ethics. And, I mean, I know that it will, and I want to say impeach, actually. If there's not an enforceable code of ethics that enforces with fines or with disqualification, then we do have to go to the I word. I mean, this is not even, the step with Alito, I keep on, is not even close. Justice Thomas described, his being supported by Harlan Crow as, he didn't realize that the rules applied to him. I think that that's bogus. But the flags with Alito are unambiguous and in your face.
What would Clarence Thomas say if a litigant went before the Supreme Court and said, "I'm sorry, Justice Thomas, I didn't know the law applied to me. I mean, that's and it was good enough for you, so it's good enough for me." Nancy,
it's the whoops defense. I've talked about it. It was Trump's defense. I thought at the beginning of the classified documents litigation that he would go, "Gee, I put my underwear in this box. Who knew that there were also nuclear secrets?"
By the way, Judy in Storrs, Connecticut reminded us with a photograph and a text that Speaker Johnson has that appeal to heaven flag right outside his office as well. Before we get to
he's not on the Supreme Court.
No, I know, but it's still, but he's still
Christian nation.
And an insurrectionist, stop the steal kind of thing. One thing before we get to the Trump trial, where Tuesday there should be closing arguments in Manhattan, we have no reason to believe that this immunity decision that we've talked about, the Supreme Court intentionally delaying, at least in our estimation, so that the clock runs out on that trial for Trump. We have no reason to believe that's going to come out before the end of June, before they go home for the season, right?
No.
Okay. All right.
It's not the season. It's not a baseball.
Whatever the hell it is, Nancy Kerrigan. Whatever is it called? Session. What are they? What are they? Session. Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's worth pointing out, even though Super Tuesday was a big deal, but it's worth pointing out the Supreme Court, as this MSNBC story points out, the Supreme Court rushed to make sure that they put him back on the ballot in Colorado in time for a Super Tuesday.
That was less than a month.
Yeah, they did that very quickly. So they could certainly do this very quickly. And Jack Smith asked them a long time ago to do it quickly. So they refused him, and now it seems they're refusing the rest of the country.
So Nancy Gardner, Marjorie and I, it turns out, coincidentally, were both watching CNN the other night when James Comey, former head of the FBI, came on. And we've never seen him as anything other than a stiff kind of person. Obviously, everybody remembers for the Hillary Clinton thing, but that's a whole other topic. And he was totally relaxed. He's talking about a thriller, I think a courtroom thriller, something that he has written, and he was totally relaxed. And Anderson Cooper said to him, "So is Trump going to be convicted?" And I don't know about you, Marjorie, was sure he wouldn't answer the question. And he answered immediately and said, "Yes, he will." And Anderson Cooper was shocked that he, I guess, answered. And he said, "I think it's at least 80%. I don't know if you do the Nostradamus thing as a former judge, but based on arm's length following of this trial, that again, closing statements, testimony's done, closing statements on Tuesday, what's your sense of what happens here?
Well, let me sort of do a disclaimer. I mean, I used to go crazy at the press that would try to predict.
I knew you were going to say this.
The verdicts in my court, because unless you're actually sitting there,
I know.
There really is a big difference between, hearing accounts of a trial, reading the transcript of a call and watching it, which is why you and I have talked about cameras in the courtroom being the only way that the viewer has any sense of what's going on, and even that's not a perfect sense. I worry. I really don't know what my prediction would be. There are two lawyers on the jury, and what I worry about is a hung jury.
Yeah,
I worry
me
about
too.
two jurors being the way you've seen the courts be, which is bending over backwards to Trump, giving him the beyond a reasonable doubt standard that no one else gets, and showing their neutrality by basically hanging the jury. That's what I worry about. That's what you've seen. I mean, all of the judges, so-called, sort of even Democratic appointees, have, in many cases, appropriately bent over backwards to give this defendant more due process rights than anyone has had. And that's what I wonder whether that, particularly the lawyers on this jury, would do that. And what would happen if there was a hung jury? Trump would claim it was a victory.
Of course he would. He would say he was acquitted.
In my view, right. It would be in my, well, then the public is not supposed to know, if that happens, the public's not supposed to know the split unless the jury actually tells the judge that and it becomes part of the record. So if the split is, 6-6, that would be terrible. I mean, that would suggest a genuine hung jury. If the split was 11-1 or 10-2, that would suggest he came very close to being convicted, but it won't matter. The takeaway would be a hung jury.
By the way, you're going to be speaking of Anderson Cooper, are you on Anderson Cooper tonight, I just heard? Are you?
I thought I was, but I'm not sure, because sometimes they don't have one on Friday night. Why?
Well, I was going to watch.
Well,
figured...
we saw in the New York Times talking about, we saw Judge Gertner there. We were all very excited. There's Judge Gertner in the New York Times. But anyway, so one thing that I thought was kind of hopeful, and maybe I shouldn't be so hopeful, but the story about the number of judges that Joe Biden has appointed. Donald Trump appointed a lot of judges when he was the president of the United States. Some of them, the American Bar Association said, weren't qualified to be judges. And I know the judge, Eileen Cannon, our staff checked this morning down in Florida, the one that's delaying the classified documents case. She was, I guess, made it as qualified, but barely made it as qualified when she was nominated.
Minimally, right? Wasn't that?
Yeah, something like that. Minimally qualified to be judges, which doesn't give you a lot of confidence. But in any case, Biden is catching up, not apparently with the most influential judges, the appeals court judges, I guess that is, but this is hopeful, I think, because he's appointing more people of color, more people that are not corporate lawyers to be justices. What do you make of his appointments? Well, I think the appointments have been terrific. I think it's terribly important that different, not just diversity, not just black, white, not just male, female, but that different perspectives be represented on the bench. I mean, you and I, we've talked about this before. I have run into judges who will tell me that, and I've said this before, I don't believe that police officers lie. And I say, I don't believe that all police officers lie, but I surely have seen, perjured testimony in the cases that I tried, and even in the cases that I sat on as a judge. And if you come to the table with one set of perspectives, every credibility determination you make, every determination of what's reasonable will be affected by that worldview. And so it's really important to have different worldviews on the bench, public defenders, people in small firms. Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey have done an incredible job here trying to do that. So I think that it matters. But, the quote, Democratic appointees are often the ones that are the most scrupulous about due process and procedural rights, and that's what we have seen. Judge Chutkan writes a lengthy decision on immunity. The Court of Appeals affirms her in a lengthy decision. And the Supreme Court can give those decisions the back of the hand. So yes, it's better to have many perspectives on the bench, but the problem is that the Trump judges, and I hated to say Trump judges, but certainly Judge Kaczmarek, Judge Cannon, are people who are actively trying to promote an agenda.
Kaczmarek is the Mifepristone judge.
Yes.
As you know,
Right.
Nancy Gertner, your friend Ruth Bader Ginsburg took criticism for not having resigned. She was ill, elderly, and I think, as we know, after she died, in about 6.5 minutes, Amy Coney Barrett was on the Supreme Court. The two oldest judges on the court are Alito and Thomas, and while I can never believe that either of them would ever retire, my thought is, and we always talk about how important it is to consider who they'll pick to the court when you're picking a president, they might decide to resign during Trump so they can pick two 40-year-olds if he's president of the United States. Sonia Sotomayor is 69 years old, which is not old in 2024. Look at Nancy Gertner. If you're not watching on streaming, she was exultant
Waving
there.
her hand and saying that's not old.
Should
Right.
she step down. We have 6 months of a Democratic-controlled Senate and a Democratic president. And even if Biden's reelected, the conventional wisdom is going to be a Republican Senate. Should she step down and let Biden?
Because she's got health issues with diabetes.
I forgot about that. And she's also 69. What's your take on that?
The problem is that even though the Democrats control the Senate, it's not an iron-fisted control.
It's true.
And I worry that they would not be able to get a substitute. That's what I worry about. They would not be able to get a substitute.
And if you were confident there were 51 votes, including the vice president, would you think it would be the right move for her to step down?
That's a hard thing to say. I mean, 69 is not.
Oh, I know.
That's hard. I don't know whether it would be the right move at this point. She's quite terrific, and she's created. There's a cohesive group. She's well respected on the court. A new judge will take some time to be well respected. And although Ketanji Brown Jackson has been superb, and whoever's on the court, assuming, if Trump wins, it will be very important to have seasoned voices and strong voices on the Supreme Court. So, I think as I'm talking, I'm sort of weighing against doing that. And I think that would be the safer route.
I'm hesitant to ever give advice to a former federal judge, but let me give you one small piece of advice. You should probably find out before 8 o'clock if you're on Anderson Cooper. That's what I'll leave you with. Because if you are and you don't show up, that's a problem.
No. There's a whole production. They have
fine.
Yeah. Ketanji Brown Jackson, isn't she a public defender? I think she's a public defender. Yeah, she was a public defender. Yeah.
She's a public defender, but it's
she's one of the only ones.
She's the only one.
Yeah.
Didn't she work for Ron Sullivan when Ron Sullivan, who's now at Harvard Law School, has been with us when he was the head of the public defenders in D.C.? Yeah.
Yes. No, she's and she has been unusual for a new justice. She has been incredibly strong.
Active.
Yes, she's great.
I agree.
So it's you're trading, a seasoned hand for someone who would be new, and ordinarily that may be more problematic. But I think on balance she should not. What she could do is she could resign subject to. This is what federal judges do. They take senior status, which means creates a vacancy, and they take senior status upon the selection of their successor. I would have to look into whether she could do that. I would resign upon the, but I don't know whether that would work.
Nancy Gertner, it's good to see you.
Thank you very much. We'll
so
look for you tonight, nonetheless, just to check out and see if you're there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy Gertner. We have been speaking with retired federal judge Nancy Gertner, senior lecturer at Harvard Law School and a Boston Public Radio contributor, and we always are grateful for her time. Okay, after a quick break, we're going to talk with Massachusetts Congressman and Marine Iraq War veteran Seth Moulton. It is Memorial Day. He'll tell us about this cleaning of the D.C. Vietnam War.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Boston is kicking off its unofficial start to summer this Memorial Day weekend with the annual music festival, Boston Calling. The Cape just spotted its first great white shark of the season, and a look into what happens when first responders are priced out of the areas they're meant to protect. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Boston Foundation, believing that when we close opportunity gaps, we can build a greater Boston. TBF partners with other leaders to move equity forward. TBF, Move Equity, Move Boston, tbf.org. And Creative Playthings, designing wooden swing sets and playset accessories since 1951. Creative Playthings, childhood starts here. For more information, you can visit creativeplaythings.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A little earlier today, right before the show started, we spoke with Congressman Seth Moulton. He zoomed in. He's a Marine, did 4 tours of duty in Iraq. He represents the 6th District here in Massachusetts. We talked to him about Memorial Day, politics, and the ongoing war in Gaza. We spoke with Congressman Moulton before the International Court of Justice ruled that Israel must hold its military offensive in Rafah in southern Gaza. So know that, and here is Congressman Moulton. Congressman, it's really good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, too.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time, Congressman. So it's Memorial Day weekend. I understand there's a relatively new tradition among veterans that are in Congress and the Vietnam Memorial. What's that about?
Yeah, well, yesterday morning we went down and we washed the Vietnam Wall. And it's a really moving experience. The very first thing you do is you go up to the wall and you very carefully take all the pieces of remembrance that families have left, friends have left, and move them away, and then make room to wash it, and then very carefully wash this wall so that it's gleaming for Memorial Day. But I mean, anyone who's visited the Vietnam Wall knows how moving it is, but to actually be a part of cleaning it and keeping it looking nice and getting it ready for Memorial Day, it's a pretty special event.
I'm sorry,
I was just going to ask you, you mentioned removing items that families had left. What kind of items do people leave?
A lot of flowers, a lot of flags, but a lot of notes. People write letters and put them in envelopes, and then often they'll leave pictures, sometimes newspaper clippings of these young men when they died. And it's it's amazing to think not just about the loss of their lives, how these young kids who were just doing the right thing by standing up and serving the country, even in the midst of an unpopular war, just so no one had to go in their place. And you see how young they were when they killed, and then you think about all the life that they missed.
Yeah.
Everything that everyone else got to do back home that they never got to do.
For those few who don't know, Congressman Moulton served his country 4 tours of duty in Iraq as a Marine. You've talked to us in the past about how there's a special bond with veterans in Congress that cross party lines. Does that continue in this sort of sick, polarized time, or is it fractured to a degree, Congressman?
No, it does continue, and I still look to veterans on the other side of the aisle as sort of my first stop when I'm looking for a Republican to work with because of that shared experience. I think there's also a special connection between veterans of our most recent wars and veterans of Vietnam, because they're both unpopular wars. They're both wars that a lot of the American public resented or didn't support. And yet again, we went so that no one had to go in our place. That's what signing up is all about. Because when you protest the war, when you burn your draft card, it's not like there's just an empty spot in a tank or a plane or on the ground or in a patrol. Someone fills that spot. Another American goes. And I think we all have to remember that on this Memorial Day weekend.
One more related thing, if I can, is I have to say, and I think Marjorie feels the same way, we were privileged to have Khizr Khan on the radio with us, and several times I had him on television. I'm sure people remember him from the Democratic National Convention, with his wife, Ghazala, standing next to him, taking the United States Constitution out of his pocket. And obviously their Gold Star family, their son Humayun died. Is respect for veterans at the same high level it's been for much of our lives, or have the attacks of the Trumps of the world on John McCain, on people like Khizr Khan and his family, has that caused support for you and your colleagues to diminish, or is it still strong?
It's a good question. It's kind of amazing that America elected a president who so openly disparages veterans. No president in American history has looked down upon veterans the way that Donald Trump does, calling us losers, suckers for signing up, losers for getting killed. That's what he said. I think the vast majority of Americans know that that's wrong, but it does get under my skin, to be honest. The utter hypocrisy of people, even fellow veterans, who support Donald Trump, knowing just how opposed he is to the military.
Talking to Congressman Seth Moulton.
We hear a lot, and deservedly so, about not the greatest pay for the people that are serving the country and not the greatest living conditions. There's been some attempts through the Defense Authorization Bill to to fix some of this? So tell us.
Well, I mean, come on. Let's not go too far, Marjorie. I mean, they gave me like an extra $150 in combat pay because my life was actually at risk. I mean, $150 a month.
You're right. No. Yeah.
All I had to do was, be in a combat zone to get that.
Yeah. It might not buy you McDonald's these days. So
I do think we should be paying our troops more, and actually in the defense bill that we just passed the night before, by the way, a very bipartisan effort, one of the most bipartisan efforts on the defense bill that we've seen in a while. It does include not only some pay raises, but some real improvements in life for life for service members, barracks improvements, quality of life investments, so things that will make serving in the military better and get the troops what they deserve.
I know a while ago, I think you had to fight with them over at the VA to prove that you were actually we're in the military. Anything that we should know about the VA? I mean, we've got a couple of hospitals right here in Boston. I know there's VA hospitals all around the state. Anything? How are things there?
The thing about the VA is it's very mixed. Like, I love the team that takes care of me at Bedford, Massachusetts. I think they do a great job. I think a lot of veterans are very happy with the care they get in Massachusetts, in part because the VA has very strong partnerships with some of our top medical schools, like Harvard Medical. All right. And so I have a doctor at the VA who works at Harvard Medical School. He's unbelievable. He's a professor. He's one of the best doctors I've ever worked with in my life. But on the other hand, there are VAs in other parts of the country that are not so good. And I think the experience you're referring to is, I made this commitment to keep getting my health care at the VA, something that I'm proud to uphold while my fellow veterans go there. And shortly after I got this job, after I was elected, I had to have surgery, a hernia down in Washington, D.C., and the Washington VA is not one of the best. And I walked in, they couldn't find my records. They said, well, how do we, we can take you as a humanitarian case, but we can prove you're humanitarian. and then I'm like, I get this great surgeon who volunteered her time from George Washington University, felt very capable, I felt I was in very capable hands. And as she was putting me under, she says, oh, yeah, I don't really trust half the nursing staff here. And I was like, well, maybe we should stop. But it was too late. I was out, got the surgery, woke up, went to the pharmacy, and they sent me home with the wrong medication. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, in my case, basically they were supposed to give me a very strong painkiller, and they gave me Advil. But in some way, I was lucky, because imagine if it had been the other way around. Yeah. Imagine if they gave some really strong opioid or something, and I took that instead of something more mild. I mean, I could literally be addicted, right? So
that's true. That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
I consider myself lucky, but I try to get sick in Massachusetts now, not in Washington.
Let me tell you, Congressman, I have a lot of medical professionals on retainer. So if you ever need any help, you give me a buzz. Can we turn to the Middle East? We've talked to a lot of people, including some of your colleagues, about the conduct of the war in Gaza, but never spoken to anybody from Congress who's done what you did. As I said, 4 tours of duty in Iraq. What do you make of how Israel is conducting its campaign against Hamas in Gaza?
It's a really important question. And we have to start by saying that Israel has every right in the world, I would say an obligation, to defend itself. And neither Palestinians nor Israelis are ever going to be free until we get rid of Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It uses its own people, the Palestinians, as human shields, which shows how much they value Palestinian life. And of course, it has the destruction of Israel written into its charter. So the problem, however, is that the way Israel is going about defeating Hamas isn't working, and it's morally wrong. They're killing too many civilians, thousands and thousands of innocents killed. And from a military perspective, understanding what it means to fight in a counterinsurgency, they're just not going to win if they keep doing this, because in a counterinsurgency, you have to not just kill the terrorists, although that's important. You also have to win the support of the population. That's the hard lesson that we learned in Iraq and Afghanistan, is it wasn't good enough just to kill bad guys. You had to win the support of the good guys too. And Israel is not doing that at the tactical level. They're really alienating the civilian population. And they're not doing it at the strategic level as well, where they find themselves increasingly isolated on the world stage. So I'm proud to support Israel as a strong ally of the United States, the strongest democracy in the Middle East. But I actually want to see them win this war, and the way Netanyahu is prosecuting it is not going to win.
Well, one of the things I don't understand, and needless to say, you know a million times more than I do about these things, but just from reading and watching what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, it seems as though if you've got a bunch of terrorists in tunnels and under buildings and under schools, I don't understand how dropping huge bombs on outside those areas is going to work. It seems to me you've almost got to do a door-to-door kind of deal, which we saw American troops doing in places like Fallujah, I think, where the people were actually going into homes and looking for people.
That's absolutely right. You're a great military analyst, Marjorie.
Well, why aren't they doing that?
You've been paying attention, right? I mean, in the very early days of the Iraq War, we used a lot of air power. And then it was all door to door. And especially under General Petraeus, when he came in and really changed our whole strategy to a counterinsurgency, it was all about being on the ground, out with the population, small patrol bases, where we got to know the people, where we developed relationships with the civilians. And you just don't see that happening with the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces in Gaza today. You're right. And the bigger problem they've got, another big problem they have in Rafah in particular, is they have said that in the tunnels under Rafah, this part of Gaza that they're focused on right now, the part that the U.S. has said, it's not a good idea to go in there. In these tunnels, not only do they have the top leaders of Hamas, but they have the remaining hostages. So I don't understand how they're going to drop big bombs on tunnels in Rafah and not kill the hostages in the process.
So should we be conditioning aid to Israel on certain behaviors in terms of the Israeli military?
Well, the president already has, and he's following in the footsteps of presidents like Ronald Reagan and others who have conditioned aid to Israel and to other allies when they're using it inappropriately. In the case of Biden, it's a pretty narrow condition. He's just said we're not going to give big bombs. Exactly the kind of bombs that we were just discussing shouldn't be used.
Yeah, but a week later, he gave $1 billion in armaments to Israel, which...
but he was... Yeah, but I mean, look, he was careful about which ones he gave. I do think that we should continue to support the defense of Israel. I mean, look, it was some of our weapon systems that were absolutely critical to defeating this massive missile attack from Iran, an attack that if it had been successful at taking out Israeli civilians, and let's be clear, it was aimed at Israeli civilians, then it would have invited a massive counterattack by Israel, and we could very well be in a wider Middle Eastern war. So that kind of aid is really important for defense, and absolutely that aid should continue. But the message that President Biden is trying to send to Netanyahu, by the way, is the same message he's hearing from his own cabinet now, when his own ministers are saying to him, you've got to have a plan here. You've got to have a political endgame. And the strategy that you're executing today isn't working. I mean, incidentally, these are the same messages that people like me who have counterinsurgency experience have been saying from day one. I wrote an op-ed just about a week after October 7th titled Netanyahu Needs an End Game. He still doesn't have one.
Speaking of Netanyahu, I believe you're among the Democrats who voted to stop the effort by Marjorie Taylor Greene and a few other lunatic Republicans to so-called vacate the chair. And I think I read that you had said the Democrats should get something in return. Not only they get nothing in return, but the day later, Mike Johnson, the speaker, is trashing Joe Biden. And now he's invited the Prime Minister of Israel to speak to a joint session of Congress. How do you feel about Netanyahu addressing you and your colleagues, Seth Moulton?
Well, listen, we hear from a lot of world leaders, and it's important to listen to them. I'll go and hear what he has to say. But I think the problem with inviting Netanyahu is it's empowering someone who, in my opinion, doesn't have the best interests of his nation in mind. Israel's interests are not the same as Netanyahu's interests. And you know who knows this really well? It's Israelis. And that's why Netanyahu's approval rating is in like single digits with Israelis. They know that his personal interests are not aligned with the nation, state of Israel's interests. And so, I just don't think that it's smart for Mike Johnson to be empowering someone, supposedly because he supports Israel, who's not really looking after Israel.
We're talking with Congressman Seth Moulton, who is a graduate of Harvard University. And as you know, Congressman, yesterday there was hundreds of kids walked out of the graduation ceremony chanting pro-Palestinian chants. The faculty there said that 13 children young adults whose degrees were going to be withheld should not be withheld. And the Harvard Corporation overruled them and they were withheld. Do you think that the Harvard students should get their degrees if they were part of peaceful protests in Harvard Yard, or what?
Well, I'll gloss over your Freudian slip calling them children, Marjorie.
Sorry. I'm getting old, Congressman.
But the point is, look, you are young adults, and actions have consequences. And the university is simply upholding its policies. Yes, I 100% support peaceful protest. I 100% support freedom of speech. It's a foundation of our country, of our form of government. But if you violate an organization, a university's policies that you've been a part of, then why should people who violated in other ways, other kids were just out drinking too much that night, they're going to get in trouble if they violated a university's policies, and these students should too. So they signed up for the policies that Harvard has, and I think Harvard has a right to uphold those policies, and that seems to be what they're doing right here.
What do you think of the behavior of college presidents? I'm going to channel my second favorite radio talk show host, that'd be Marjorie Egan, who asks every single guest when we're talking about college presidents, members of Congress, faculty, why doesn't one of these presidents turn to Elise Stefanik or Virginia Fox, the chair of the committee, and say, when you denounce your candidate for president for supporting those people who killed Heather Heyer, or the person who killed Heather Heyer, and those who chanted Jews shall not replace us in Charlottesville, we'll be happy to answer your questions about anti-Semitism on our campuses.
I would love that. I would love that so much, because there is so much hypocrisy in Congress today. I mean, you're talking about Elise Stefanik, who we have a lot of mutual friends from Harvard. She was the most moderate Republican in all of Congress. And then all of a sudden, she just realized her political future was in, supporting Trump, really kissing up to Trump. And that's all she does now. And of course, Virginia Fox is, arch conservative, absolute arch conservative, who is really stuck in the past in terms of educational policies. I mean, it's sort of like the Middle Ages with her. And yeah, calling out this hypocrisy would be amazing. When people ask me, if there's one thing you could fix about Congress, I sometimes say, just make hypocrisy matter again. Just make hypocrisy matter again, because then we could have honest debates.
But I don't want to belabor this, but, we've talked a lot about the performance. The performances of the presidents yesterday was better. But how do you feel about higher ed, particularly at elite institutions, when the only person who has really confronted the Stefaniks and the Foxes was this, what's his name, Banks, the superintendent.
New York City schools.
Why
he was great.
And by the way, almost everybody with whom we speak, Congressman Moulton, says many of the decisions, and I know you appear to agree with them, that many of the decisions have been made by college presidents are not on the, vis-a-vis demonstrations, are not on the merits, but because of fear of Republicans in Congress and big-time donors like Bill Ackman at Harvard.
Well, I mean, look, I do think that, I've had numerous meetings with Alan Garber, the interim president of Harvard, and I just want to say, I do think that he is trying to do what's right and follow the university's policies here. At least that's my understanding of it. I'm not in the weeds here. We've got some other problems in the world that are more important to worry about. But I do think that it's important for university leaders to be able to simply answer questions in front of Congress. Now, I don't think that it's appropriate to be hauling all of them before Congress for political purposes, which is clearly what people like Fox and Stefanik are doing here. But look, if you lead a world-leading university, you ought to be able to answer questions.
I would say so. Guy, last question for me, speaking about your day job, your job rather than running a university. I mean this, you're approaching 10 years, I think, in Congress. How do you go to work when you know that sitting in the same room with you are, I don't know the precise number, more than 100 people elected who voted to overthrow the government of the United States when they chose not to certify the legitimate and lawful election of Joe Biden a few years ago. How do you do that? How do you deal with that?
It's very simple. It's not about them. It's not about them. It's about the good Americans out there that I serve, the people of this Commonwealth that I work for every day. And yeah, it's frustrating. It's embarrassing to be in an institution with people like that. But I'm not there for them. I'm there for the people of Massachusetts. I'm there for veterans across the country. I'm there for my kids because I'm really worried about the future of this country and this world. And having a job where every single day you can see the impact of your work on the lives of other people. Sometimes over simple things, like just a veteran who shows up at our Salem office because he's not getting the service that he needs, the care that he needs, the VA, and we help him out. You know, that all makes it worth it. And I'll tell you what, it's the second job I've had in my life where I can see the impact of my work every single day on the lives of other people after being a Marine. And you know, after being a Marine platoon commander, it's an honor to be in Congress. And I often say it's the second best job I've ever had.
Congressman, one more thing, talking about being worried and worried for your children. Lots of people are worried because they think that Donald Trump is going to be reelected. How worried are you about this election and Joe Biden's chances? He's struggling in the polls, if you believe the polls.
I'm very worried. And I think Democrats have to face the facts. And it means two things. One, it means that we've got to work really hard for the next several months going into November, because the facts are pretty clear that this is a tough election. And the second thing is it means that we have to look ourselves in the mirror as a party, because the other party, the Republican Party right now, is in the midst of a civil war. It's playing out across the country, though it's often come to a head in the House of Representatives, where we didn't even have a speaker for 3 weeks because of this Republican civil war. This party is led by an indicted criminal who's spending his days in a courtroom right now because he paid off a porn star. And yet we're losing, or at best we're tied. So what does it say about us that we can't win? I mean, we should be cleaning up from school board to president of the United States in every election in America, and we're not. And so Democrats have to do some serious looking at ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, we're losing touch with people, because this should be easy. And
So
it's not.
we wish you luck with your work, and when you're back, we'll talk about why you're not hurrying up to get us high-speed rail in America.
Oh, yes.
I'm working hard on
I
it.
know you
I'm
are.
working hard
I know
on it.
you are.
I know the results have been thin so far, but they did break ground on the first true high-speed rail line in America.
It'd be the best.
Well, you have two huge supporters here.
Because
Seth
we
Moulton.
need the high-speed rail, because the rate we're going, the tracks that we have now are going to be underwater in about 3 years, so we're going to get going.
Seth Moulton, we really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much, Congressman.
Great to be back.
Yeah, thank you. We've been speaking with Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton, who represents the state's 6th Congressional District, and we thank him very much for taking the time to be with us. After a quick break, we are opening the phone and text lines. We couldn't do it yesterday, but we wanted to bring it back because we could not go a week without our favorite segment, Am I the A-Hole? And we have this Memorial Day weekend, as we all hit the road, we are asking you, how do you deal with the backseat drivers in your life? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, our Arts and Culture Week in Review, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. It's life imitating art, or is it artificial intelligence imitating life? We look at OpenAI approximating the voice of Scarlett Johansson for their ChatGPT named Sky. And it's no coincidence that OpenAI's CEO loved the movie Her, where Johansson starred as the voice of an operating system. We take on that and more. That's today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Subaru of New England.
This spring, you can explore New England in the all-wheel drive 2024 Subaru Forester. You can find your Subaru retailer at subaruofnewengland.com. And National Grid, helping businesses work toward a sustainable future by offering guidance on heat pump solutions. Learn more about how heat pumps can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions at ngrid.com/future.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brody and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH. So we missed it yesterday for whatever reasons. It's time for Marjorie's favorite segment of the week.
That's right.
Am I the a-hole? A sort of Memorial Day weekend themed edition, since AAA is warning this will be the busiest weekend on the roads since before the pandemic. So here's the deal. 25-year-old man writes on Reddit, am I the a-hole for asking my girlfriend to stop backseat driving? For context, this man is very confident in his self-described aggressive driving style. He writes, in all my years of driving, I only had one accident that was technically my fault. Meanwhile, the girlfriend has expressed some discomfort about how he drives, to the point where she's been asked to be the sole driver whenever they go somewhere. She asked for that. As it stands, they now share driving duties, but when he's driving, she can't help but complain that she's always taking unsafe turns and making that he's always taking unsafe turns and making aggressive, unnecessary merges. So let me explain this better. At 877-301-8970, who's the a-hole? The aggressive driver who can't accept constructive criticism. And by the way, there's a real life version of this. That would be Marjorie. She is you are an aggressive driver.
Okay.
You do not accept criticism. I've been your passenger a number of times. Or the cautious driver, that would be me, sitting in the passenger seat, attempting to help the aggressive driver drive more safely for all involved. The number is 877-301-8970. Again, is it the aggressive driver who can't take constructive criticism, or is it the cautious driver who should, I guess in the minds of people like Marjorie, should just shut up and sit in the passenger seat?
I would like to point out that the so-called cautious driver
that would be me.
Has rear-ended not once, but twice. Rear-ended two elderly ladies.
One was not elderly.
One was on the Southeast Expressway.
Yes.
It was a dire situation. Done it
It's
twice.
not dire.
So how could you be that cautious when you keep riding around?
It wasn't dire for her. I broke my wrist because I rear-ended her. And if you recall, I did rear-end a woman on Melanie Cass Boulevard. What did the woman do after I rear-ended her?
I think she got out and she said she liked your show or something like
She
that.
called our show.
She called your show.
An
That's
hour
right,
later,
she
she
called
said,
the show.
I'm the woman you rear-ended, because she was afraid I was going to not give her money. So who is the a-hole? Is it by the way, I have driven with Margie a number of times. She's a very aggressive driver. I do admit that I give criticism because I'm worried she's going to hurt herself and me. Am I the a-hole for giving the criticism, or is Marjorie the a-hole for total and complete refusal to accept it?
Let me tell you something. I'm a guilty person here because I do drive aggressively. I was a reporter for all these years in Boston.
People.
I don't tailgate people.
Yes, you do.
But I get very upset if I'm driving with somebody else who does that. Now, you, on the other hand, I mean, if you drive on the Massachusetts Turnpike, and unless there's a traffic jam, nobody's driving 55 miles an hour. You were driving 55 miles an hour. And I would argue that even though the speed limit is 55, nobody drives 55. And so you are a danger to your fellow drivers by driving 55.
It's called obeying the law, actually.
But the thing is, I'm not that aggressive a driver. I don't.
You're a very aggressive driver.
But I don't like it when somebody else does it. It makes me very, very nervous. And this guy is saying that his girlfriend is concerned about their safety, and that's why she tells him to stop driving the way she does. He talks about
which is what I do when I'm driving with you.
Weaving in and out of cars, and having to slam on the brakes, to avoid. I would say this guy is a hazardous driver, and I don't blame her. But you know what? It is annoying.
By the way, when you drive with Marjorie on the Turnpike, you could not put a ham sandwich between her front bumper and the bumper of the person in front. I'm telling you, you may not like this. You are an aggressive driver. And by the way, I've never yelled. Of course, I would never do that or anything. I just say, I think it'd be best for both of us if you like living, if you actually slow down a little bit. And you never slow down.
I do not drive. I mean, you're exaggerating, Jim.
I'm not
exaggerating. Take it from somebody who drives 55 miles an hour on the Massachusetts Turnpike. That's all I have to say. John from Medway says, I typically remind everybody that there is just one steering wheel in the car. I think that is a very, very good point.
So what's the point if you drive with someone, shut up and accept what they're doing? Is that the point there?
I think it's hard because even though you say I drive aggressively, I don't think I drive that aggressively, but I don't there's someone close to me that drives, I think, very aggressively, and I don't like it one little bit.
Well, isn't that telling, isn't it? So it's fine. You don't like it when that person's driving aggressively.
Because I know when I'm...
But when you do...
That's right. When I do it, I feel like I'm in
I
control.
rest my case, Your Honor.
But I don't tailgate. I used to tailgate. I don't tailgate anymore.
Excuse
That's
me.
very
You
dangerous.
never admitted to me you tailgate. Now you admitted you tailgate.
Years ago, I tailgate. I don't tailgate anymore. And by the way, you want to knock on wood.
Notice Margie's having a hard time expressing her thoughts because she knows she's
someone, and you have rear-ended someone.
Have you ever backed up into a pillar in a garage and had your whole back window break out of your car? Have you?
I did do that.
Okay.
People that have bike racks on the back of their cars.
Fine.
If you drive a minivan, and I used to drive a minivan for years. I drove a minivan, and if you have a bike rack and you don't remember that you had the bike rack, it's very easy to break the back window in the minivan.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, let's go to Kathy in Brighton. What do you think,
Hello, Kathy.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie, first-time nervous caller.
Oh, don't be. Hi.
You guys are great.
Thanks.
I'm sitting in my car. It's parked, so I'm being very cautious.
Good for you.
However, I agree with Marjorie. I'm an aggressive driver. I'm 65 now. I don't like to admit it. I have been driving.
You just admitted it.
Since I was 17. I know.
Okay, go ahead.
Since I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm aggressive. I follow all the rules. And also, when I have people, for example, my mother, who's 88,
Oof.
when she's in the car with me, and she does, she's saying, slow down, do this, do that, it's very distracting.
Exactly.
Well, maybe you should slow down. It wouldn't be. Hey, Kathy, if you slow down, it wouldn't be distracting.
Oh, Kathy, how
I'm
about...
not slowing down. My mother drives faster than me. But I don't say anything because I don't want to distract her.
Well, that's right. When somebody goes, watch out, you go like, watch out.
Kathy, let me ask you a question because you're a first-time caller. Here's a question, and I'd like Marjorie not to intervene. I'm talking to Kathy. When you're driving with Marjorie and you can count the freckles on the neck of the driver in front of you, would you not agree that we're a little too close?
Spoken by the man who's rear-ended people twice.
Kathy, excellent first call. Say hi to your mom, and thank you for calling.
Our staff member Zoe is on my side, Jim. She says, this is Marjorie slander. Marjorie drove us very ably through the winding, treacherous streets of rural New Hampshire.
Primary weekend.
And at least Marjorie does not order takeout over speakerphone when
that's true. I did do that.
Someone has passengers, and that would be you, Jim Brady. Let's go to Colby in Somerville. What do you think about this, Colby?
Colby.
Hey, thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
Look, I think some people would call me a cautious driver. I call myself a defensive driver.
Thank you.
And what I have to say for people merging without signaling, riding people's bumpers, what's the hurry? Where are you getting to that you need to get there so much faster than me?
That's
and
right.
often you're only a car ahead of me by the time you cut me off. So my question to you guys, where's the hurry?
Well, wait, excuse me. The question is not to you guys. The question is to Marjorie.
Oh,
Marjorie,
sorry.
Colby would like to ask you, what's the hurry, Marjorie?
Well, as our staff member pointed out, Colby, I'm being slandered here by Jim Brady. I do not tailgate. I may drive faster.
You do
than
drive
Jim,
fast.
But everybody drives faster than Jim because Jim, what do you think of somebody, Colby, that goes 55 miles an hour on the Mass Pike? Come on.
Go ahead, Colby.
Right? They're causing accidents
Sorry,
is what
did you
they're
say
doing.
55 or 65?
No, 55 in a 55 mile an hour zone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that is the legal limit, and I wish people would stop doing 75.
Yeah, well, nobody.
Like when you're passing by Fenway and you've got barely an inch between you and the car next to you.
Flow
Colby,
traffic.
you are an excellent caller and a wise man. Thank you for your call. Appreciate it.
Okay, here's Katie from Bradford. My wife and I have a rule that if one of us starts to backseat drive, we simply say, honey, who has the wheel in their hands? And that has stopped a lot of arguments. People don't like people constantly going, watch out, don't do that, slow down, turn around, don't do that, don't do that. The watch out, the unexpected watch out can be very upsetting and very startling. Fred's in the car. What do you think,
By the way, you know
Fred?
you admitted that you tailgated in the last few minutes here.
I tailgated years ago.
Years ago. And why'd you
years
stop,
ago.
Marjorie? I'm sorry. What was the tipping point there? When did you stop?
Because I saw what happened to your cars after you rear-ended someone not once but twice and got a broken wrist.
By the way, that is a true story. The woman did call the show. The woman I rear-ended on Melanie and Cass Boulevard like 10 minutes before the show started, called the show about an hour later. Fred in the car, what's up?
Hi, guys. Several-time caller. For
Thank
the
you.
first time, I'm actually on Jim's side here,
Thank
and
you.
it feels strange to say that.
Strange for me, too, Fred. Go ahead.
Yeah. I grew up on this very deadly corner in Brockton, and it's a hill that looks like it goes on forever. And people who were unfamiliar would go up it, and they'd lean on the gas. And as soon as you get to the crest of the hill, it would sharply turn to the right. So there were so many fatalities when we were kids, and my mom was a nurse. We'd all get out in the middle of the night, and we'd watch the ambulance take them away.
Oh, God.
So anyway,
That's awful.
Yeah. So it is, but as a result, I'm thankful for it because now I drive like a little old lady. I'm nice and safe. My kids are safe. And God love you, Marjorie. It's a very ugly quality. You got to stop doing it. You're putting people in danger doing that. You just do.
I'm putting people in
It's
danger.
precious.
It's an
doing
ugly
that.
quality. I'm with
It's
Fred.
an ugly
Fred, it was a
quality.
brilliant call.
Took
Thank you
care of
very
me.
much
Took
for
care of me.
making it. Well, he said
But here's a
what needed to
texter
be
who
said.
says, Jim, there is nothing in the world worse than being behind someone that's traveling the speed limit. How about that?
By the way, do you believe you and people are criticizing me for not breaking the law?
Somebody said the speed limit on the Mass Pike is 65. I think as you
No,
get
it's
closer
55
to Boston,
until you get out to
closer
open road,
Boston,
yeah.
it's 55. And yeah, nobody drives 55. And if you do
No,
drive
one
55,
person does.
that's right. You and Mike, no, two people. You and Michael Dukakis.
That's we don't have
Michael
time for this
Dukakis
story,
is
but
like
it's
90
true.
years old now.
No. This was decades ago when he was governor.
Yeah, he was still.
And I was driving down
Yep.
the turnpike, and there was only one car driving as slowly as mine. And I slowed down even more so I could see it. And in the back seat, Governor Dukakis waved. So it was actually great. You know why? Because he believes in the rule of law.
He believes in the rule of law.
Yes,
That
he
is
does.
correct.
We
Sarah
love
in Cranston says, backseat driving makes me drive worse because it stresses me out. Very true. My husband is a terrible backseat driver, so I refuse to drive with him unless he's taking a nap on a road trip.
Wow.
We've been happily married 21 years, so it seems to be working.
Doesn't sound that
There you
happily
go.
to me.
Well, she doesn't like him criticizing her on the road.
Abe in Auburn, you're next on Boston.
Oh, listen to this.
Wait, hold on, Abe.
90% of drivers think they're better than 90% of the drivers. Marjorie is part of that group.
Exactly.
They're taking me to task.
No, you
Jim.
do it. By the way, you're not an arrogant person at all.
Mhm.
You have a little arrogance when it comes to driving, I have to tell you. Do you know that?
Well, you know, I was a reporter for all these years in Boston. You had to get to the scene of the crime, Jim.
So
You had
you're
to get to
admitting
the
it
scene of the
again.
crime. That's right. Had to get there very quickly. Let's go to Abe.
By the way, let me just say one more thing, if I may.
Yep.
Here's a quiz for the audience here. One of the two hosts of this show did not have a bumper on her car for, I'd say, 3 years. Was that me?
That was a long time
or
ago.
Was that, excuse me. Or was that Marjorie Egan? Anybody have any? Oh, it was Marjorie Egan.
That's right. Yeah.
No bumper.
Somebody hit me.
Okay.
I was rear-ended.
Yeah.
Was it by you, Jim?
No, it's not by me.
Okay, let's go to Abe in Auburn.
Hi, Abe. Abe, say something.
Oh, this is a good one.
Or don't say anything. We'll put you on hold. We'll get back to you someday, I guess.
Suddenly, Jim is such an advocate for safe driving.
Exactly.
After his run-in with the state police.
Forgot about
And
that.
his subsequent court date. Let's put it this way. Only one of you has needed to appear in court due to your driving.
No, she
And that
appeared
is
in
a
court
very
as a
good
hostile
point.
witness,
That's
so
right.
both of us
That's
needed
right.
to appear.
I have never driven across the middle of Morrissey Boulevard in Dorchester. It drove right across the
What did
middle.
the cop do to me?
He arrested you.
No, what did the cop do before he arrested me?
He pulled you over.
And what did he do to me?
Oh, God, he screamed at you.
He dropped about 400
I
F-bombs
know.
on me.
I've never heard you drop 400 F-bombs either. I mean,
By the way, I was
I'm
acquitted.
sure you were very
in truth,
offended.
I was acquitted on one of two charges.
Yeah.
What, was I acquitted on one or two charges?
Yeah, so Jim gets
And my
to this
lawyer, who was then the former head of the Mass Bar
of the
Association,
Mass Bar.
he had
A
to
well-known
subpoena
lawyer.
Marjorie as a hostile
that's right,
witness
because Jim
she would not
wanted
testify
me to lie about what happened.
That is like unbelievable.
That's what you drove right across
By the way,
middle
can I say something?
of Morrissey Boulevard.
It was not a lie. It was a little addendum to what might have happened
Okay.
on Morrissey Boulevard. Oh, it's Gabe. That's why I
Gabe in
didn't
Auburn.
answer.
Sorry, we had it wrong.
Hi, Gabe. How are you?
Good. How are you? All right, so here's
We're
my
excellent.
take on it.
Please.
Because my wife and I, we're married 60 years. We go through this every day.
Okay, good.
Here's the point. It has nothing to do with how you drive.
What does
you
that
guys
do?
are talking about how to drive. No. It's this man who's married to this woman has no respect for her feelings.
Oh.
What if she says it's too cold in the car? Does he turn the air conditioner more? Say, no, you shouldn't feel cold. If she feels nervous about the way he drives, he should drive differently while she's in the car. It's a question of common courtesy. It has nothing to do with how you drive.
Can I tell you, I hate to agree. That was a beautiful call.
That is lovely.
That was, and so based on that, Marjorie, based on Gabe, with whom you agreed, When I said to you, please slow down, you're almost in the back seat of the car in front of you. Why didn't you say thank you if you're uncomfortable? I'm going to slow down.
Making this all up.
No, I'm
you
not.
weren't in the car with me. I passed you on the highway. This is where you get these things.
I've been in the car
from.
with you
I passed
20
you on the
times.
highway. I think you're making that
Have I
up.
ever driven with you?
I don't recall.
Oh my God.
I don't think so. Your
I don't
Honor,
recall.
Your Honor, I have no memory of his driving in my car with me.
That
Okay,
is really
Paul in
horrible.
Gloucester. What do you think, Paul?
That is really horrible. Hello, Paul. What's up?
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
I like that last call, too. It's part of what I was going to say, but I grew up with my father and mother doing this on our long-distance driving vacations.
Oh, yeah.
All the way from Chicago to California. So here's what he said to her.
What?
To both honor her feelings and drive safely, because the a-hole is the unsafe driver, and speed and aggression are not the same thing. You can drive fast and safely. So she would yell at him to slow down, do this, that. You know what he would say? Thank you for the valuable driving information. And continue driving exactly as he was, safely but fast.
Well, I think that's a compromise. I think. And Marjorie, if she... Well, I think, Marjorie, you would argue you drive fast but safely, as Paul said.
I would argue that I drive
His
fast but
father,
safely.
yeah.
That is correct. I would say
By the
that.
way, Paul, thank you.
And you know what I don't do?
No.
I don't drive in the left-hand lane when I'm not passing somebody.
I
either.
never drive in the left-hand lane.
You're always in the left-hand
I
lane.
usually drive
Going
in the breakdown
55.
lane, actually. By the way, an anonymous texter said, I thought the cop on Morrissey Boulevard said, no, I do not know who you are.
Yeah, well, he didn't know who
He
Jim
didn't know
was.
who
That
I
was
was.
problem number one. It went downhill from there.
Mhm.
And you never heard anybody. I've never heard you drop any F-bombs, Jim. That would never, ever.
Never. Well, I never
Listen to
did it
this.
as a cop, did I?
This is from Patrick in Canton. There is no better feeling than burning rubber and getting to your destination a minute before the GPS says you should have arrived.
That's pretty
That's
good.
a great point,
That's
Patrick.
a
How
great
much
point.
fun is it to beat the GPS?
No, it's good.
That is really...
Or when the time goes down, when
Yeah.
it says like 18 minutes, and then it says 17 minutes. Well, of course, that's because you've been driving a minute. So I guess that's not. I guess that's not as exciting.
Yeah.
as I
Oh, and
thought it
somebody
was.
else just
Okay,
said, who's the
forget
person that said, my husband is an aggressive driver. I am not. His auto insurance premium is twice the price of mine because of all his accidents and citations. I rest my case.
I rest my case. Show's over.
Oh, the show's over.
Oh, oops.
I was just getting started.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much for
Thank
listening to
you.
another edition of Boston Public Radio. We are not going to be back here on Tuesday. We thought we were, but we're not.
We'll be back.
So we're going to be
sometime.
back on Wednesday, I think.
We think.
We think.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Just stay tuned. We'll
Stay
tell
tuned.
you.
Stay tuned.
We'll be
We'll
back
let you know.
soon.
We'll be back soon. That's right.
Thank you.
But thank you very much for listening to this edition of Boston Public Radio. You can listen to us anytime via our podcast. We have two, the long one and the short one. I recommend the short one. It's a half hour. It's called Boston Public Radio, which
Wow, I
is
love
very,
that
very
name.
clever. Yeah, it's very clever. On Monday, you can tune in for a special Memorial Day edition of Boston Public Radio. We're going to be joined by Joan Donovan. She knows all about cyber sleuthing and hacking. What is her specialty? What do you call it?
Disinformation. She's probably the premier expert in the world
Thank you.
of disinformation
The premier
and misinformation.
expert in the world of disinformation and misinformation.
Right.
We're going to be joined by Diane Foley, who's written a book about the murder of her son, James Foley, the journalist who was killed by ISIS. She's going to be with us as well. The great singer and songwriter Tom Rush will be with us. Jonna Mendez will be with us. Joanna Lidgate, who is, of course, that Democracy Group, and she's also the
Partner of the governor.
Partner of the governor.
By the way, that Jonna Mendez is
Spectacular.
the head of the chief of disguise for the CIA.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I got to quickly because I got to say
Okay,
something.
quickly. Okay, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Laws, Cliff Notes going to be with us on Monday. John Claude Parker and Jane Bologna, thank you very much. Team here at the library, Maddie
don't
Garr,
need to
Carly
do
Cochran,
that.
Matthew
We do it every
Glover,
day.
Chris Hanks.
Okay, fine.
Juan,
Thank you.
Joyce Cadena. Okay,
There's some wonderful women that serve food
Shut
here,
right off.
along with the newsfeed.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And M&M Skylights, located in Stoneham, installing and servicing a wide range of Velux skylights that can help bring air and more natural light into your home. You can learn more and schedule a skylight consultation at mmskylights.com. This month and every month, GBH celebrates the achievements of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders who have enriched our history and culture through their resilience and creativity. Learn more at gbh.org/AANHPI.
The reporting you hear each day on GBH is made possible in part by our sustaining members. It's easy to set up. Just pick an amount to give each month, say $10 or $15, and it's automatically deducted from your bank account or credit card. It takes just a few minutes to enroll, and when you do, you'll be doing your part to keep quality news and entertainment programs here on GBH in the months ahead. Learn more at gbh.org/sustainer.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you?
I'm Culture Show co-host Callie Crossley. Coming up on The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. First up, Lauryn Hill, Kendrick Lamar, and Beyoncé round out the top 10 list of Apple Music's 100 best albums of all time. How do you like them? Well, you know what. Then Suspicious Minds, the foreclosure auction of Graceland has been dropped following a Tennessee judge hitting the pause button amid allegations of fraud. Plus, a tiny taco stand in Mexico turns tourist destination after making culinary history by getting a Michelin star. Finally, it's Follow-Up Friday. The portal connecting Dublin to New York City has reopened. Will this exhibition that attracted exhibitionists bearing bosoms, butts, and beyond survive another dose of human behavior? That and more next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. The International Court of Justice ruled today that Israel must halt its military offensive in Rafah in the south of Gaza. Kate Bartlett reports the ICJ also said Israel must allow humanitarian aid into the area and access to UN investigators.
The court's ruling came after South Africa approached the ICJ, asking that as an emergency measure, it order Israel to stop its actions in Rafah. Zane Dangor from South Africa's Foreign Ministry said afterwards the ruling was groundbreaking.
South Africa welcomes the ruling made by the court today. The court essentially ordered Israel to halt its military operations in the Rafah area to ensure that no further harm comes to Palestinians.
South Africa originally went to the court in The Hague late last year, accusing Israel of genocide. The court is still considering that case, but in January announced preliminary measures ordering Israel to take all measures to prevent Palestinian deaths in Gaza. For NPR News, I'm Kate Bartlett in Johannesburg.
The U.S. House has voted to ban non-citizens from voting in local elections in Washington, D.C. The legislation is unlikely to become law, but it is the latest vote from either the House or Senate that forces its members to be on record on election year issues such as immigration. NPR's Ashley Lopez reports opponents are calling the legislation a Republican-led effort to undermine the legitimacy of elections.
Voting by non-citizens is a rare occurrence, and it is already illegal in all federal elections in the U.S. In D.C., non-citizens are only allowed to vote in local elections. But Republican Congressman Clay Higgins of Louisiana said that practice is unacceptable.
D.C. residents should be confident that their local government vote is not being diluted by non-citizen residents or illegal immigrants casting votes.
Supporters of this measure have not provided evidence of any meaningful number of non-citizens voting in U.S. elections. Democrats have called these efforts an election year distraction. Ashley Lopez, NPR News.
Highways and airports are likely to be crowded in the coming days. AAA says it's the busiest Memorial Day weekend in terms of travel in close to 20 years. Aixa Diaz with AAA says it appears the coronavirus slowdown has eased and some people are booking in advance.
They didn't do that during the pandemic, obviously, because there was so much uncertainty with COVID. So many plans would get canceled that people were very apprehensive to book a trip too far in advance, not knowing what the future had in store. Now people have that confidence back. And what they're seeing is that our agents say, look, people are calling them saying, let's go ahead and book for 2025, 2026 in some cases.
The national average for regular gas is $3.61. This is NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Massachusetts Environmental Office says it lifted a moratorium on timber harvesting on the state land back in January. But loggers say no new projects have gone out to bid New England Public Media's Nancy Cohen reports.
Early this year, a state-commissioned committee issued a report on climate change and forest management. It recommended ways to protect state land to address climate change. At the time, the state said it would put out new forestry projects to bid by spring. But Chris Egan from the Massachusetts Forest Alliance says, for the most part, the state has not issued new contracts since the end of 2022.
Our hope is there'll be a lot of projects released and that people can start working again, because it's been a real tough time for timber harvesters in Massachusetts.
The state says it's reviewing projects to see how they align with the committee's recommendations. The group Save Massachusetts Forests wants more land to be permanently protected. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Nancy Cohen.
It's possible the MBTA Charlie cards could fade into oblivion, much like the long-forgotten MBTA tokens. Remember those? MBTA officials say they're looking at a new fare system, possibly launching this summer, where riders will be able to tap their credit or debit cards or even use digital wallets like Apple Pay to pay the fare. A similar system is already in place, and we're told it works fine in New York City. Sunny mid-80s today. We are at 81 degrees outside the Boston Calling Fairgrounds. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, a personalized program that bases rates on safe driving habits, at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
From the GBH News Center of Investigative Reporting. The state's Recreational and Environmental Agency says its new top objective is to expand public access to beaches.
We heard from people loud and clear that having that connection to water is so important.
But there are challenges.
Massachusetts has the most restrictive ocean access laws in the country.
The incredibly high cost of coastal property.
I'm Chris Burrell. A follow-up to our investigative series, Barriers at the Beach, is available now at gbhnews.org.
Welcome to The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Culture Show co-host Callie Crossley. Jared Bowen is out today. I'm joined by Culture Show co-hosts James Bennett II and Edgar B. Herwick III. It's time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
Music is at the heart of everything we do at Apple. We have strong feelings about the music we love most. And it's why we decided to curate the 100 best albums.
Actress Scarlett Johansson sang this voice used by OpenAI's virtual assistant Sky.
Hello, I'm really excited about teaming up with you.
Sounds, quote, eerily similar to her own.
Hi, how you doing?
The people at the prestigious Michelin Guide have just proven they're down with Taco Tuesday, just like the rest of us. El Califa de Leon is a Mexico City taqueria that's been serving delicious tacos since 1968.
And an update in the case that could reshape college athletics. The NCAA Board of Governors voting to approve terms of what is expected to be a multi-billion-dollar settlement in the class action antitrust lawsuit against the NCAA.
But we are not here today because Live Nation Ticketmaster's conduct is inconvenient or frustrating. We allege that Live Nation has illegally monopolized markets across the live concert industry in the United States for far too long. It is time to break it up.
It was supposed to be a live stream connection between New York City and Dublin, Ireland, meant to foster positive interactions. But instead, it has led to some bad behavior. And now the portal has been temporarily shut down, just less than 1 week after going live.
As you just heard, Apple has released what they think are the top 100 albums ever made. We'll look at the surprises, snubs, and usual suspects. And don't be cruel. That was basically what a Tennessee judge had to say to a company that was trying to sell Elvis's Graceland estate in a foreclosure scheme sale. And an historic NCAA settlement could be truly a game changer for college sports. Plus, the Justice Department sues Live Nation and Ticketmaster for monopolizing. Finally, it's Follow-Up Friday. The live stream portal connecting Dublin to New York City was shut down because people just couldn't help themselves. Barring butts, bosoms, and more, it's back online and giving humanity another chance. But first up, Apple has released its Best 100 Albums list. And if you want to keep the Kendrick Lamar versus Drake rap battle alive, Lamar comes in at number 7 with Good Kid, Mad City. And Drake comes in at 47 with his album Take Care. Well, let's talk about the controversial number 1 pick, which is The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Some people think that's not the best number 1 album ever made. I will just share this anecdote with you that when that album first came out, the impact was so huge that Peter Jennings, then the former news anchor for ABC News, led the evening newscast with the...
Wow.
Yes.
Really?
So that
Do not remember that.
Yes. So that's a huge impact statement about that album. But, James.
Okay. I think we got played by Apple.
Yeah.
I love that album. I think it's very, very good. I've never seen it at number 1 in anything, and I was always like looking at it in the context of everything else that was on that list. I was like, did Ebro and company just like want to make up a reason to give Lauryn Hill another award, which like would be well deserved?
Totally.
I think. Yeah. You know, they presented it to her at a dinner, like a private dinner in New York, and my only thought was, did she show up to dinner on time?
All right, moving on. Edgar.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, I would describe this list as irrational. Like, I love a good list, but I can't read this list of 100 albums and work out what the criteria for them was for quote unquote a great album, right? Yeah. It seems to be somewhat irrational. I was thinking about, you know, like the $25,000 pyramid, you know, and like the way that game worked. And, you know, if you were with your person, you'd be like, you know, bananas, corn, and they'd be like, oh, that's yellow foods. Like, you get that. If somebody gave me these 100 albums, even when they got to 100, I would not be like, that's the list of the top 100 albums of all time. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And of course, like any list, it's meant to generate talk, and, you know, I'm happy to talk about it, but yeah, just it's irrational.
I also didn't find a lot of pleasure in reading through this list either. Yeah. I think when I was looking at it, the first thing I thought was like, who is actually writing this? Who are the people behind? The names aren't really attached. It feels kind of, you know, almost, I don't want to say markety, but it feels like we're missing something in terms of just, I guess, accountability for what, you know, these picks are.
Well, that's always the case. So, James, what's your pick?
Oh, my pick from the list?
Yes.
I mean, so
you chose the title track from Outkast.
I did. I chose the title track from Equimini, which is a great album. Maybe it's the second best Outkast album, and it comes in at number 47. But we could listen to it.
It says number 41. We're going to
number 41. All right.
Play a piece of it.
Still a list of 100, and this is so kind of like it's just like what what's happening?
Odd pick. Okay.
What's going on?
All right. Well, coming in at number 6 is Stevie Wonder's 1976 album "Songs in the Key of Life."
That's and that feels pick. About right to me, right?
Yeah.
That as a top 10 album, that makes sense.
That works.
Yep.
My track I chose is "Knocks Me Off My Feet." So romantic. Let's take a listen. Yeah. I love this. I just love this beat.
Those cymbals hit. I hit so good.
I know. There's so many really good ones on the list, and I like so much stuff, but I just picked it because it's sentimental. Radiohead. Edgar, you picked the song.
Yeah, I love this. I think this is also, you know, in my estimation, probably about right. The OK Computer, their 1997 album, comes in at number 12. My favorite fun fact about that album, though, is that they recorded it at Jane Seymour's house. So yes, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, they rented her mansion in Bath, England, and that's where they recorded that album. They talk about the freedom to be in this big house to make this album happen is part of how the album was able to happen the way it did. But yeah, I'm going to bring us all down a little bit with this track, Let Down, which I absolutely love.
Okay, let's take a listen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, again, not knowing what the criteria for this was, I look at this as an album and this song on this album as one of those things where you can hear a little bit of what Radiohead did before this. Now that we're past that album, you could hear where they were going. All of those elements are kind of in this song, and I think that's one of the things to me that makes a great album is when you can kind of see it in the context of an artist's larger oeuvre, I was going to say.
Okay. Well, and though Louis Armstrong wasn't on Apple's 100 list, he might land on someone else's list because a brand new collection of Louis Armstrong recordings is set to be released by Verve Records this July. Once again, we've had these discussions about this unreleased work popping up. And here we have him, the later years of his life. It was a few years before he died. He wasn't in the best of health, and he recorded this with the BBC. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, it's 1968. He does, 3 years after that?
Yeah, 71.
And there is a track that was released on the Louis Armstrong Vivo, which is a wild thing to say out loud. But it's him performing Hello Dolly with the BBC. And even though he's in relatively poor health, there's still so much joy that kind of comes through on that recording. And I'm really gripped by the timelessness of it. I think the timelessness in music is a real thing, that there can still be a lot of excitement among not just fans of Louis Armstrong, but music history, kind of fans in general, to get what he's called his favorite performance.
Yeah, I mean, there are scholars and biographers and folks who, really know Louis Armstrong and his work who have heard this, in the past, and many of them say that this is the last great performance of his. And I really like the poignancy of what you're talking about, James, which is the fact that Armstrong himself, in the final years of his life, apparently would send this to a lot of the recordings of this to friends and family. He scrawled a note on it that said "for the fans" at one point. When people would come to his house, he would play them the concert footage of this. The other thing is, apparently there is high definition video of this. They've released, one track. The whole album, 13 tracks from a live performance in 1968 in London, is coming out, I think, in July, if I'm correct. But there is one track that's come out with an accompanying video on YouTube. So fingers crossed that we're also at some point going to get high definition.
That video is HD?
Yeah, I think
so. From 68?
I believe, up converted into HD. Fair point.
I think it's one thing to say that we should also mention is that for a long time he really suffered from a reputation of being, as someone said, borderline minstrelsy because of the handkerchief and the big smile. It appeared like he was performing for white people. A lot of black people were like,
Yeah.
So that the level and the quality of his work sometimes got pushed aside because people were so angry with him for what they felt was his not standing up. It turns out he was doing his own kind of thing that people didn't know about, but still there was that.
Yeah, I remember a professor made a point once when I was in college about if you look at a lot of those early Louis Armstrong films, where he would, sing and perform in, what some might call like a, minstrel-esque manner. You look at the eyes, and he knows what's going on. He knows what he's doing. He feels kind of like the conflict within. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, coming up, a tiny taco stand in Mexico makes history, earning a coveted Michelin star. That's next on The Culture Show, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Everyday people.
I'm 15 years old, and I'm watching high school basketball tournaments.
Personal stories.
Cheerleaders, the fans, all wearing fake feathers, fake headdresses. They are doing the war whoops and chants. As an Indigenous person, I say, what the hell is this? I always knew that I had a voice that could make a difference on this issue.
Stories from the Stage, Sunday night at 7 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Boston Foundation, believing that when we close opportunity gaps, we can build a greater Boston. TBF partners with other leaders to move equity forward. TBF, Move Equity, Move Boston, tbf.org. And Wellwithal, believing that self-care is community care. Products crafted for your daily wellness, from sleep support to heart health to your daily regimen. They won't stop until it is truly Wellwithal. Wellwithal.com.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Boston is kicking off its unofficial start to summer this Memorial Day weekend with the annual music festival Boston Calling. The Cape just spotted its first great white shark of the season, and a look into what happens when first responders are priced out of the areas they're meant to protect. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Memphis. This is the Culture Show, live from the GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm Culture Show co-host Callie Crossley, joined by co-host Edgar B. Herrick III and James Bennett II. It's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. We're going over the latest headlines, which includes Graceland and a fraudulent foreclosure sale that has people all shook up. Now listen, a lending company said that Lisa Presley, the recently deceased Lisa Presley, the daughter of Elvis, had signed, had agreed to pay back a big loan, and that they were foreclosing on the house because she didn't, you know.
She had put it up as collateral for the loan, according to them.
According to them. Granddaughter Riley Keough said, no, this is some fraudulent stuff, and a judge really stopped it down almost before it got started. There are some complications. Apparently, the action took place out of state, so that was going to cost the lending company some issues if they had tried to go forward. So,
I think it's a bit buffoonish. Yeah. Like when I read this story, my main thought was like, how did you think you would pull this off? What did you expect to, or what did you want to get out of Graceland? And where I kind of landed on is like, are we in a place where we assume that other people aren't reading the fine print, even when they're tied up with, legal entities or estates? Like, Riley Keough can afford to kind of lawyer up on the dime and be like, my mom didn't do this.
I mean, this really felt like, whoever these folks are seem to me like the bad guys in a Coen Brothers movie, right? I love that, somebody who is has no skill whatsoever to commit a crime is going to try to commit a big crime. The other thing that pops into my head is just imagine somebody in and around Memphis on Redfin or Zillow, and they're like, let me check pre-foreclosures. What's going on? And they see 17,000 square foot mansion on 13.8 acres. And you're like, is that Graceland? They were just literally, this company said, with a couple days notice, right? They're like, it's gonna go up for auction, foreclosure auction coming up on Thursday. And it's Graceland? No. It just seems absolutely insane.
Well, they shut it down. Graceland as a place of pilgrimage still in January around Elvis's birthday and the rest of the year. So
also worth noting, on Apple's 100 albums, no Elvis, no Paul Simon.
That's true. No Paul Simon, and therefore no Graceland on that song. All right. Well, moving on to a story where life is imitating art, or artificial intelligence is imitating life. It depends on how you want to look at an open AI using a voice for their chat GPT that sounds a lot like Scarlett Johansson, who starred in the movie Her as the voice of an operating system. This is very bizarre. First thing we should say is the company that made this system asked her to be the voice, and she said no. Yeah,
it sounds like multiple times, right?
Many times. She said no.
They really, and we know that they also were interested, we think, in her because they've referenced the movie Her, right? So the
Big fan the guy is,
we sort of know that they thought that this would be a really clever thing to do, right?
So. All right, so we're going to take a listen here's a sample of Scarlett Johansson's voice in the 2013 film Her.
Good morning, Theodore.
Good morning.
You have a meeting in 5 minutes. You want to try getting out of bed?
All right, and this is Sky, the people that, claimed her voice. Here it is, the OpenAI's virtual assistant, Sky.
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, some of Jance's friends were saying that they couldn't actually tell the difference, but what's, a bit ironic, I guess, is that we spent a lot of last year talking about the SAG strike.
Yes.
To be like, yo, AI, don't take our jobs. And, I understand that that's with the film and television industry. Mm-hmm. And this is tech kind of doing what it wants and steamrolling and expecting to get away from it or get away with it. But yeah, I feel this has just been a conversation that we've already been having. We seem to kind of be on the same page that, AI should not be manipulated, right? To, take a job.
Yeah,
it is a job.
I will say, I think this is a good thing right now because this is such a high-profile case. I think the big issue that we face looking forward is the actual legal framework that is going to need to be architected, that we are in the middle of, that we hope, I think all of us, we hope will eventually be able to protect people, artists, whoever it is, from just willy-nilly having their voice, their image, their likeness, their work just taken away from them and put into the blender and churned out as AI, right? So we need that legal framework, and when somebody as high profile as Scarlett Johansson says, wait a minute, I think this is happening to me, well, she, to your point, like Riley Keough, has enough money to lawyer up and go after them. And hopefully what we'll see is some precedent that is going to protect the thousands and millions of artists who don't have the money to fight back, whose names we don't know, who are also, I think, probably being exploited in this process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the whole thing to me just kind of recalls, big companies or entertainment, conglomerates, right? Not taking away the lesson of the movie does not end well for Joaquin Phoenix and her.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so we want to push a parasocial relationship, on people that use this AI system, but it's like, Netflix saying, oh, let's make a real Squid Game.
Yeah.
Like anytime you see
it's
an
like
article,
you missed the point.
Yeah, about like a dinosaur, like, can we clone it? It's like, we've seen Jurassic Park. Stop it.
Well, I think everybody will hear about this because of Scarlett Johansson, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this ends finally. Meanwhile, in a culinary first, a taco stand in Mexico City with only 4 items on the menu gets a Michelin star.
Kaboom.
This is incredible.
This is awesome.
So we should say that the Michelin star system has been going on since 1926. They send out anonymous inspectors. They taste food and then they write it up. And to get a star, and certainly to get more than one, is huge. And this is this little teeny place. One of y'all want to talk about it, in Mexico City. And the 4 ingredients look delicious, by the way, and the way that they handle it. And here we are.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about this is it seems like, there sometimes in the world, in the culinary world, right, there is this pattern where it's like, there are nameless faceless people who are doing simple food in a great way, right? Some higher profile chef or more expensive place kind of takes some inspiration from that, quote unquote, elevates it somehow, and then gets a Michelin star, right? This feels like, oh, they're cutting out the middleman. We're finally going, wait a minute, we don't have to wait for somebody else to sort of take this and put some inspired, quote unquote, spin on it. Let's give the Michelin star to this chef who's been working in the same place, in the same way for decades, just making a simple, amazing quality product. It's like, this is folk music, it's rock and roll, it's few simple ingredients, bam.
It's Taqueria El Khalifa de Leon, in case people are going to Mexico City looking for it.
And those that are actually going, my one thing that I wish they would hold, right, is to keep it pushing. This is not a restaurant. It's like I've been, reading about it, right? And you're kind of shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't think there's the time and the energy, right, to Instagram up a plate. And that's the thing. I think it's good to remember that.
You mean when you're there?
Right, when you're there.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
There's no vibe criteria when it comes to a Michelin star. It's just for really excellent food. Having a Michelin star doesn't mean you're walking out with a $400 bill. State Bird Provisions has a Michelin star in San Francisco, right? I think the most expensive thing on their menu is $36.
Yeah.
And so it's just go in, but don't conflate the star that's, symbolizing how good the food is with this sense of kind of, luxury to flex on your
some
friends.
sort of experience, yeah.
And maybe people don't know that Mexico City is now a whole stop for foodies.
Yeah.
So to your point, the kind of folks that would be normally getting Michelin stars this place is now cheek by jowl with them because there's a lot of them there as well.
No, and it's great. Again, I mean, it's literally just it's a tortilla and meat, and like you
lime
put your own
juice and
sauce,
salt.
lime juice and salt. It's fantastic.
I know. I love it. I love it. I may have to make a stop. Anyway, coming up, the Justice Department is suing Live Nation, the owner of Ticketmaster. What could this mean for concert goers? That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
College in the U.S. is expensive, and just when you thought you were done paying,
well, there's a technology fee,
extracurricular related fees,
textbook fees.
There's a $60 fee if you don't correctly check out.
I'm paying fees for things that I don't even use or necessarily need.
why schools nickel and dime their students. On our podcast, College Uncovered.
Colleges and states often want to push charges into fees so students pay for it instead of scholarships.
Listen today, wherever you get your podcast.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And M&M Skylights. Servicing Massachusetts and New Hampshire, their team is part of the Velux Skylight Specialist Network and is committed to helping improve the air quality in your home or business. You can learn more and schedule a consultation at mmskylights.com.
The world takes you outside our borders and connects you with the most important events happening all across this big blue marble.
We introduce you to memorable people whose stories will stick with you. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Carol Hills. Global news and inspiring voices that connect us to people all around the globe.
Join us Fridays on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Culture Show co-host Callie Crossley. If you're just tuning in, co-hosts James Bennett II and Edgar B. Hurwick III are here for our Arts and Culture Weekend Review, which includes the future of college sports. The NCAA and the nation's 5 biggest conferences have agreed to pay nearly $2.8 billion to settle a host of antitrust claims. Now, this decision paves the way to send millions of dollars directly to college athletes as soon as 2025. This is connected, of course, to the licensing permission that a lot of college athletes got most recently, which allowed, for example, Indiana Fever's Caitlin Clark to make $3 million and more in endorsements. Using her name and likeness, even though her salary for the WNBA is, $76,000 a year. So this is a complicated piece, but the bottom line is people are about to get paid.
Yeah, it's the claim of amateurism, right, that I think is kind of, not to get all Holden Caulfield, but it's like you're a phony. This isn't, you don't care about the student's education. And I think, honestly, what kind of made this clear wasn't necessarily the NIL deal, but it was the big conference realignment that happened last year. One of those Power 5 schools, Pac-12, 10 teams left. And one of them, right, Stanford, joined the ACC. Now, Pac in Pac-12 stands for Pacific.
ACC stands for Atlantic Coast Conference.
Is it good for a scholar after an athlete scholar to fly out to the East during term? And it's just kind of, they're doing that, so they can get better television ratings to add to the $3.5 billion in their coffers,
So it's a lie, the whole amateur stuff that has been, they said that was the culture of college sports, that they're amateurs, we're not paying them as professionals.
Right, and the problem is that over the course of decades now, this has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? There is millions and millions of dollars in TV money, there is millions and millions of dollars in concessions and ticket sales at these universities, especially when it comes to basketball and football in particular. And the fact of the matter is that, I think there has now for some time been increasingly broad agreement, I think, among most people, that it is no longer fair to not pay the athletes. But the devil now is in the details. The NIL thing has been around. That's the name, image, likeness thing. Has been around for about 3 years, I think, now.
Yes.
And so this is kind of, they've quasi been able to be paid, but there's problems with that because it's like groups of sort of boosters who are putting money together, and there's a lot of transferring going on. But this is different because this is going to be direct revenue sharing with the colleges, right? So that's a whole different ball of wax.
And we've been talking a lot about football and basketball, but there are so many other sports that could be impacted by this. I think it was a swimmer that, was involved kind of in the early steps with this lawsuit. And so then it becomes, is there a tier system of a university paying attention to its students? Are they going to give all of that money, to the football team, or would they give it to, like, I don't know, the crew or sailing? It's a thing to think about.
I mean, I think that's it. Someone has said it's the biggest change in the history of college sports. That's how much a cultural shift this is going to be.
Yeah, I think there was one person, I'm trying to find the name in a quote that said this sort of closes one Pandora's box, but it opens 4 or 5 more. And I think it's important to realize, like, now we're going to have a couple weeks where the settlement's going to be hammered out. That also has to be agreed to by the judge. Then it needs to be implemented. And there are questions about what does it mean for smaller schools? What does it mean for schools that have basketball but not football? What does it mean in the context of Title IX? Like, there are a whole bunch of unanswered questions, but the fact of the matter is this is basically like taking the chessboard and just kind of throwing it up in the air. And now the pieces are going to have to be realigned. But we'll see.
Yeah, and this, like you said, is kind of the biggest kind of like chapter in this whole thing, and it's opening up these other Pandora's boxes. Is that the right pluralization?
Yeah.
I guess it is. But, there's other things going along with this, too. If you remember, not that long ago, like the Ivy League isn't included in this settlement, but after a judge ruled that Dartmouth basketball players were employees of the school,
that's right.
They unionized. And so, you can kind of go beyond, right, these large institutions and these large programs withholding some kind of restitution.
2 other quick things. One, this is also it's going to change part of this, and why this agreement is happening, and et cetera, is going to be about Congress's relationship with the NCAA. And let's not forget that our former governor, Charlie Baker, is at the head of the NCAA as this is being hammered out. So watch this space.
Watch this space. All right, now on to another antitrust headline. The Department of Justice is suing Live Nation, alleging that it's created a monopoly on the concert industry. I gotta say, I always thought that. I guess I'm slow. I didn't realize it was the question because they own 200 concert venues. They also own the other ticketing. So as this charge indicates, there's no way for concert goers to go really to not be involved with Live Nation at this point.
It's sometimes not fun.
Yeah.
To even go to the concert because you're just thinking about, like, I just dropped so much, going to this artist that I like. I mean, and the other thing, too, is if you're going to do antitrust, like, monopoly kind of conniving, like, kind of be on the low. It's like, the idea of, like, being a criminal, like, not flaunting all of your wealth.
Right.
Because they're starting to squeeze.
Yeah.
They're getting a cut from parking. They're getting a cut from concessions.
Yes.
They're getting a cut from even the artist merch that's being sold in these venues. That's not getting kicked back to the person performing on stage. And,
except they say it's because of the artists that they've had to raise these prices.
Yeah, I mean, that's and maybe that's part of it, but it would only be part of it, right? According to the Department of Justice, Live Nation controls about 60% of the major venues around the country and 80% of the ticket sales because they also own Ticketmaster, right? Which, by the way, was a merger that they had to get approved by the U.S. government, which they did some years ago. But this is also clearly part of a larger trend right now in this particular administration, right? We've heard Joe Biden talk about fees and going after unnecessary fees, and this kind of fits in that narrative. But the DOJ has also sued Apple and Google in recent years. The FTC has brought suits against Meta and Amazon. So it's this idea of at least a little bit of flexing on the Department of Justice's part to say, like, all right, no more monopolies. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's that's part of a trend.
Yeah, the weird thing about it, right, is that that merger with Live Nation and Ticketmaster was done, like, what, in 2010, 2011?
It was it was like 14 years ago. Yeah.
And it's like, those terms were clear. It's like, what did you think was going to happen?
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
That's how I started this conversation.
But there is a theme in our show today, right, about sort of a level of boldness in what I think we perceive as at some level of rule breaking, right? From the trying to sell Graceland to AI saying, well, I know we talked to Scarlett Johansson, but we're just going to boldly, like, basically copy her voice, to what you're saying about how Live Nation has behaved even after the merger, clearly outside of what was negotiated. So, I don't know.
I think that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, because I have no sense of what's going to happen there.
No sense at all
Not
of what's going to hold.
It's time for Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday. Follow-Up Friday.
Well, that means it's time for Follow-Up Friday.
Just on time. Right on time.
Where
Follow-Up Friday.
We bring you the latest news on developing stories that we've been following on the Culture Show's Week in Review. First up, an update on the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Now, this is the museum that closed the galleries of Native American art because they had failed to pay attention to the rule that says they had to repatriate these items. They were supposed to be in conversation with Native organizations to do that. They closed the galleries. That was the first step, so we thought. But then nothing's happened.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this in January, right? So basically, it seems like what happened was this is a law that had been in place, a federal law that had been in place since 1990. But clearly, in recent months, the federal government, I think they put a couple tweaks to that law, but I think they also put all of these institutions on notice and said, yeah, we know this has been on the books for a long time, but we're taking it seriously now.
Yeah.
And so these institutions at least started to comply. Apparently what's happening at the Museum of Natural History in New York, which a lot of people, I think, when they first did this, were like, good job, because that's a huge museum, and a lot of other museums are going to follow suit because they're starting to do the right thing here. But it sounds like maybe they haven't continued to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's feet dragging. And the thing is, you started off, Callie, by explaining that it's art, but also, crucially, there are human remains in this collection, too. You know,
sacred items.
Absolutely. Which is like a mind-boggling thing to think about. And like what has not happened, even in this foot dragging for the first 5 months of this process, is that a lot of these organizations have not even received a full inventory of what is in, the museum, which then leads to the question, I forgot the quote, but someone was kind of musing, is this just, again, like bold bureaucratic incompetence on display? Do you not know how to begin to catalog? Do you know how to take that inventory? Do you not know where to begin? Do you even have any idea of what's there? So,
or you just don't want to do it.
Or you just don't want to.
Yeah,
that's my bet. But.
Yeah, I mean, and this is classic. I mean, this is sort of classic, on the ground journalism being done by the New York Post on this, who are basically saying, like, we're keeping our eyes on this, and we've talked to a bunch of Native American peoples and groups, and they are saying that you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. And like, again, it's a big institution, and maybe it does take a long time to get the ball rolling, but what appears to be the case is that line of communication has just kind of been dead.
Yeah. 10,000 square feet, spears, tools, mannequins, sporting headdresses, and traditional garments. They've been there for 57 years. So I'm saying they just didn't feel like it. Okay? All right. Well, moving on. Master Blaster, the late rock band photographer Charles Daniels, a.k.a. Master Blaster. Some of his recently developed photographs, and we're talking 90,000 images, are on view at the Nave Gallery. So a little background, which you'll amplify, Edgar, because he was your neighbor. I got somebody sent me something about supporting the cause to get these images developed, because they're just sitting there on rolls, and I contributed to it, not having a clue about who
amazing.
He was.
Yeah, I mean, he'd been taking pictures since he was about 12 years old, and when he was a young man back in the 1960s, he had, he was taking photos and fell in as kind of the MC of this venue, which was not a Live Nation venue, they weren't around then, called the Boston Tea Party. And this is where a lot of these British invasion bands came in, and he became friendly with The Who and the Faces and the Rolling Stones. And he took all of these photos through the years of them of tours that he went on with other rock musicians, but also just photos of the Boston area from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, etc., right? He didn't develop many of them. 3,400 rolls were never developed. And eventually this project went together to find a way to fund the developing of these photos. They've recovered more than 100,000 of them. And yeah, you can now see some of these works on a display at the Nave Gallery, which is a small gallery in Somerville. And I actually just got word from them. There were supposed to be 2 more dates next weekend. They've now extended through more weekends in June. So June 8th and 9th, 15th, 16th, 22nd, and 23rd from 1 to 5 p.m. And then there'll be a closing reception Wednesday, June 26th, 5 to 8 p.m. Nave is very small, but the word from them is there's been, for them, a lot of foot traffic there. So they're expanding this and extending this for some time. Sounds like there's also interest from buyers, and there may be more exhibitions coming up. But it's an amazing story. It's an amazing local story. And I urge, I know the top line of this is the rock photography, and it is incredible. Like photos you've never seen before of Mick Jagger in a hotel room. But also the photos of in and around Boston for decades. I mean, it's a treasure
He's
trove.
a cultural historian.
Yeah.
The name of the exhibit is called To Be Continued, Photographs by Charles Daniels. What do you have to say?
I'm kind of taken right by the community effort that was taken to get this, this film developed. And I haven't been able to get up there, but I am curious to know, just being in that space, how much of this kind of, I don't want to say community ownership exists over it, but just kind of a classic coming together to put art kind of on display.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it generally does feel like that kind of an effort. And as Callie said, full disclosure, he was a neighbor of mine, and I got to know him pretty well over the years before he passed away earlier this year. And he was that kind of person. He was, by nature, a gatherer of people, a gatherer of stories, a sharer. Like he's when he would walk down the street or just be sitting on the porch in his neighborhood of Somerville, every person that walked by knew him. He said hi. He knew them all by name. He was that kind of person. I think that we're seeing that even in the display of these photographs.
And that includes some big names in rock and big names in some of the venue places, owners who knew him, and he was around all the time. So I didn't know who he was when I contributed. I just thought we should see what those images would be. So I'm delighted, and I'm looking forward to the exhibit. All right. We got to talk about the portal, the art installation that connects Dublin and New York through a live stream, temporarily shut down because people were beaming their bare bosoms, butts, and beyond into the portal. It's back online with some restrictions. Is it going to work?
No.
Okay, no.
I think it's working exactly as it's designed to. What did you think was going to happen? What did you think was going to happen?
But if we think about this, right, and I was like taking a beat, the jokes write themselves. But if this is a public artwork that wants to elicit some degree of earnestness from the people that it is portraying, that is, foot traffickers in New York and Dublin, in this weird way, and I'm not endorsing this, like it would work better as a giant kind of camera to see who your mirrors are when you're in one of those two cities, because the whole point is to get these two communities to interact in some way. But because people are going to do buffoonish things, as long as this is up, in my personal opinion, I think it could be a more powerful statement if it provides a literal window into another human experience, at the same time.
Well, what provoked some of the bare bosoms was a political, or what was interpreted as a political statement from the other side in Dublin. So the young woman who decided to do her bosom said, "Hey, this is my response to that."
Yeah. I mean, I just sort of think like it in the way that if it's a piece of public art, good art, and I think I've said this on the show before, it's oftentimes good art is a mirror. It's a mirror into what people are and who they are when it's done well. And people do stuff like this.
Well, that political statement, it was the image of the flaming twin towers, and if it's a mirror into people, then it's a mirror into cruelty. And if you put a big mirror there, you're going to get the cruelty and the kindness and the general kind of wackiness that might come with it.
Totally, but I guess you could ask yourself the question is, like, is the art meant to, like, are you, is it meant to say, like, this is people? This is people, the behavior of people includes the cruelty and the kindness.
Right, in which case shutting it off just kind of defeats the point.
That actually is a good point about
Yeah.
is it meant to demonstrate?
And that's kind of what I find myself grappling with. Like, in some ways it's powerful even when there is the cruelty, because it is saying, like, hey, take a look. This is how people behave. Like,
whether
they
in
do
New
this.
York or Dublin.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. All right, next up, that continuing rap battle between Kendrick Lamar and Drake inspires a work of public art in Compton. All right, what do you say, James?
We've entered now kind of like the goofy phase of this whole thing. I think like as much excitement was originally there and still might be for some, we've kind of hit like burnout mode.
Yeah.
The mural itself, for those that haven't seen it, it's in, I think it's in Compton.
Yeah.
And it just depicts Kendrick Lamar in a kung fu outfit and kung fu stance and a very bloodied and bruised Drake. So we've kind of hit this. This is now too much into the pop culture sphere if it wasn't before.
I think this is an example. I have two thoughts on this. One is I was really sad that Jared is gone today just because of how insane he went about this. The first time we talked about this, the depth with which Jared got into the battle between Drake and Kendrick
Down
Lamar.
to the lyrics and everything.
I mean, he was out of his mind, and I kind of wanted to see where he was at on this. But the other thing is, I think you're hitting on this, James. Part of this is social media. This isn't new, but it feels like it's ever accelerating. The speed with which a story happens, comes to fruition, dominates the culture, then people get to the point where they're commenting on it, then it becomes irony. It's all happening in a week or 2 weeks.
We've had the narrative arc, and now we're kind of in the weird epilogue. Like actually this morning, a couple hours ago, Drake released, or Sexy Red released a new project. Drake is featured on it, and in the featured track, he's rapping, and the beat suddenly changes to what I would call the alternative song of the summer, Metro Boomin's BBL Drizzy, which is just a mockery, of who Drake is. And now he is rapping on that. And so it's like, sure, get your millions, be happy, I suppose.
It happens so fast, and it's funny. I think about back in it was 50 years ago or whatever, where John Lennon, when he did Instant Karma, the whole idea was he was like, I'm going to write a song today, we're going to record it, we're going to put it out, and that seemed sort of revolutionary or whatever. Now, like it's just part of the DNA of things. These, this isn't just a news story, but there's also art being made in the middle of the narrative.
Yeah, the democratization, of the means to produce art on a whim, which also, to me, means that you can put out a lot of things that could be a bit better. It could be, things might be unfinished.
Fair.
Things could be
Fair.
rushed,
It could be better. Okay.
Hey.
All right, that's our lightning. It's time for our lightning round. James, what story struck you this week?
Well, this wasn't exactly a story, but it was more of a piece. Can we say that? Yeah, I guess we can say that.
Yeah.
I've really been fixated on the television series X-Men 97, which concluded its first season at the beginning of this week.
What do you like about it?
Oh, my God. The show's existence, to me, is proof. It's like perfect proof that just because something is a cartoon on Disney that connects with, kids that might have had nostalgia from the original animated series in the 1990s, that it can't still be profound. You don't need to have, the highest budget. You don't need to have, the cruelest kind of language or depictions of graphic violence, right, to make a serious political statement. For those that just aren't familiar, remember that the X-Men is a stand-in for a lot of different oppressed groups over the course, really, of human history.
Essentially because they're mutants.
They're mutants.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And normal people, are disgusted by them. They want to exterminate them.
And it ended this week.
And it ended this week.
Okay.
So,
all right.
yeah,
okay.
check it.
Okay.
All right. For me, what caught my eye is Beyonce pushed Paul McCartney to billionaire status.
Yeah.
And this caught my eye for two reasons. One, I think it's just kind of cool. The reason why is because, Beyonce's recent album, she covered Blackbird, which is a song that Paul McCartney wrote when he was with the Beatles, and that is the thing that helped push him for the first time. It's apparently the first time an English musician has reached billionaire status. But it also made me think, we talk about money in these huge terms, billions and trillions even. How $1 billion is so much money. Paul McCartney has been a Beatle since he was in his 20s. He was the most fiscally sort of safe of the Beatles. That man has diversified his portfolio. He's been doing this for decades and decades and decades.
And didn't you think he was a billionaire?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And only now at 80 does he finally get to the status that he has $1 billion. So when we hear, when you think about, we think of musicians, actors as the rich and famous. I mean, if Paul McCartney is only now a billionaire, how much money is $1 billion, let alone tens of billions or hundreds of billions? It's just kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And he liked her rendition of Blackbird, but I'm guessing if he didn't, he'd be happy with it now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying. So my lightning round is Felicia Rashad. You'll recognize her name as the actress. Most people know her from The Cosby Show.
I recognize her as my crush when I was a teenager, for sure.
All right, well, there's that. Anyway, she's leaving Howard University, where she's been the dean for the last 3 years. She took it on because it was in honor of Chadwick Boseman, where she was a big supporter of his when he went through school, got him some money to do some things. As people remember, he died quite suddenly. And so now she feels like, she did the job that she came to do, was to elevate Howard University's arts department. And the students apparently love her. They think it was great. She only had one moment when there were some issues, is when she took up for Bill Cosby, saying, well, maybe he wasn't so wrong or something. Her comments were not taken well by a lot of people, and she sort of apologized. And then after that, no controversy during her tenure there. And apparently she's been quite good for Howard University. So good luck to her. She's, I guess, going to continue acting and doing some other things, and we'll see what happens. All right.
All right.
Well, that's it for the Culture Show. You can catch up on all things arts and culture by way of our podcast, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts. And you can catch me this Sunday at 6 p.m. on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. Also, Culture Show producer Molly McCall will be covering Boston Calling all weekend on 89.7 and over at the Culture Show, GBH on Instagram.
What's on Under the Radar, Callie?
Under the Radar this week is an encore. We're looking at hidden stories from New Hampshire's Black Heritage Trail, and also we are repeating a book segment that I adore. It's a really tough subject. A woman discovered that her grandfather, whom she revered, was part of a mob lynching, and the book is called A Lynching, a Lie, and a Reckoning by Grace Alexander Hale. So what's coming up on
Curiosity Desk? Check out our YouTube channel. The latest things we have is a short of our recent episode, which you haven't seen. You should check out. We look into what is called the Bookleaf Municipal Town Border here in Massachusetts. Every time you go into a town, you might have noticed those strangely shaped signs that say now entering Cambridge, now entering Somerville. We kind of delve into what is the story behind that sign and why does it have that shape. And we talk to some people who have some pretty funny ideas of what you would call that shape. So
and is that
that's on our YouTube channel, WGBH News YouTube channel. Check it out. That's a video Curiosity Desk episode. So
okay, what's coming up for you, James?
I am in the process of diving into the connection between hip-hop and youth, specifically in Cambridge. And I also just published a piece on GBH News about Armenian foodways and food and identity in immigrant cultures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're going to be going definitely down to Mexico City to get those tacos.
I mean, I guess I have to.
Apparently the chef says the best thing to have with them is a Coke. So he recommends a Coca-Cola to go with the tacos. So when you go down there, remember that.
I like the idea of not getting the taco and just walking in for the
just coming in to get a Coke.
No, that's not going to work very well. All right. Things you recommend this weekend, real quick. It's a holiday weekend. James, what would you recommend?
This recommendation, I think, would just be
hang out. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to squeeze something in, but I want to thank everybody today, the BPL technical and logistics crew. That's Glenn Heath, Sai Patel, Josh Polinsky, Maddie Geyer, Matthew Glover, Eddie Hickey, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Carly Corcoran, and thanks to City Table, the Lennox Hotel, and the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Callie Crossley 1, along with co-host James Bennett II and Edgar B. Hurwick III.
I was waiting
Have
for
a great weekend.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.